Right, I'll call this session of Board of Revision to order. I begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. With me on the panel today, at the far end, is Lynn Nesbitt. Beside me is Lori Davidson. The secretary today is Belen Rojo, and our assessor is Svetlana Shaybal. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised, the comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included in the Board order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. If you haven't already done so, could you please put your phones on silent? We do not permit the use of phones except for necessary parking changes and anything else that would be at the approval of the chair. So with that, could we have the swearing in of the parties, please?
See, it wasn't an order to skip the dishes.
No, you can't do that.
Please state your full name.
Svetlana Shaybal.
And you affirm the evidence about present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Please state your full name.
Rocky Neufeld?
And you affirm the evidence about present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, we are starting today with 1099 Henderson Highway. Ms. Shaybal, whenever you are ready.
I would like to start my presentation with my credential. I work for the City of Winnipeg Assessment and Taxation Department, size 2014.
Maybe just
My
if you
current
don't-
position
if you don't
is
mind,
valuation
if you
officer.
don't mind.
It's very short. Specialized
And
in-
why is it necessary? You've been here a lot.
Because I
so-
see you first time, all three of you.
All right, carry on.
I work for the City of Winnipeg Assessment Taxation Department, size 2014. My current position is valuation officer. I specialize in income-producing property for most of the time. Represented the department before the Board of Revision in Municipal Board with respect to variety of property type, including vacant land, apartments, retail, office sign, November 2018. I earned the designation of Accredited Assessor Manitoba in January 2019 from the Association of Assessors Officers of Manitoba. I earned a diploma in Urban Land Economics from the University of British Columbia in 2018. I successfully completed the requirements for a certificate in real property assessment from the University of British Columbia in 2016. I hold a master's degree in agriculture from the Moscow Agriculture University. Our first file number 19-298, roll number 04-00000-3100, address 1099 Henderson Highway, owner is Vintage Enterprise Limited. We are valuing the property as a stand tons on January 1st, 2020, based on the economic conditions as April 1st, 2018. This appeal is with respect to the amount of the assessed value only. Based on the evidence in this report, in this assessor opinion, that the market value of the subject property as of April 1st, 2018, $1,337,000, and that the 2020 assessed value should be confirmed. The subject property is located on northeast portion of the city of Winnipeg. Please open page 11 and 12 of my brief. Where did I showed subject location map and air photos. It's located off northeast corner of the intersection from Henderson Highway and Oakland Avenue. The subject site has a rectangle shape of 10,395 square feet. The one-story masonry building was constructed in 1976. The improvements has a basement area 7,316 square feet. It's underground parking and has gross floor area. We assess leasable area of 7,234 square feet. On page 2, more photos of subject property. Subject property has 2 tenants and owner occupied. So tenants has around one-third space and rest occupied by owner, lower office. On page, 2 times 5. On page 2, oh, strange. I represent my rent comparables. My system. My rent comparables, map of my rent comparables presented on bottom of this table with red dot and our subject property. I have my comparables on Region, Henderson, Main, Jefferson, and Henderson. All building, I was looking for building, office building. They built between 1979 to 2010, one to 4 floor buildings. My lease. Okay, I should mention the first line, it's our subject property. On assessment on effective day April 1st, 2018, we assessed 7,234 square feet at $13.78. My comparables range in square footage between 900 square feet to 4.6 thousand square feet. In rent, net rent between $12 to $17. So our median came across $15.52 and mean and media $16.50. On page 3, our income estimation. Our potential rent with $13.78 applied for 7,234 square feet. Our potential rent $99,700. We did apply a vacancy rate 5.5% for this type of properties. Also, we account for non-recoverable expenses include general 2% expense allowance that include advertising, promotion, professional fees, structure repairs, etc. And shortfall allowance per square foot to account for non-recoverable expenses during time of vacancy on $7 per square foot. Our capitalization rate, 6.7%. Please open page 5. It's Suburban B office. We are looking on column City of Winnipeg 2080 percentile between 6.2 and 7.3%. Our assessed value 6.7% inside this range. As well, please open page 8. The following samples of actual sale that took place during the reference period. First table, it's for office on Portage, Lombard, Henderson, Notre Dame, and Robin Avenue. Rate between 5.1 to 6.54%. They're not meant to be comparable specific to subject property. By applying our capitalization rate, estimate value of subject property $1,357,000. Please open page 13. Owner provide us financial statement and rent roll. You can see that it's partially occupied. 1/4 of space occupied by tenants. It's 2,970 square feet. On page 14, we can see builders 1.1306 square feet, and classical music studio 1,664 square feet. It's together 297 square feet. If you apply this on rent income, you can see on page 13, rent income divided by square foot. Net rent came across $16.61 per square foot. I would like to remind you that we access this property at a overall rate $13.78. On page 15 through 20, all my comparables are photo. Let's look on my first two comparables on Regent Avenue. All leases signed in 2017. 900 square feet was signed for $18.16. 120, around 1,200 square feet signed for $17.07. On page 16, two leases on Henderson Highway, signed in 2016 for $16.50. In 2017, bigger square footage for $16. On page 17, lease on Main Street, signed in 2017. It's a building built in 2010. It's superior to our subject property. It's built in 1976, but it's in rent for $17. Another lease on Main Street, signed in 2017, around just 4.6 thousand square feet for $12.57. On page 19, Jefferson Avenue property, office building behind this sign, rent in 2017 for $17. In my last two leases on Henderson Highway, signed for $12, $13.56. Based on this evidence in his report, his assessor opinion, that the market value of subject property as of April 1st, 2019, 1,337,000, and that the 2020 assessed value should be confirmed. Thank you. Any questions?
Mr. Miko.
Yes, on page 3 and 4, the valuation, was this done entirely by the model?
Yes.
No, there were no alterations by you, no overrides? The comparable selection, page 2, who selected those comparables?
It's my selection.
Your selection? Okay. And information presented on 7 and 8, am I correct in interpreting this to say that they are not meant to be comparable specific to the subject property?
7 and 8. Yeah, capitalization rate, the following sample of actual sale that took place during the reference date. The purpose for showing this individual capitalization rate is to illustrate the accuracy of the model to substantiate the model derived capitalization rate. They are not meant to be comparable specific to the subject property. Net operating income has developed through stabilizing owner report income expenses information. Capitalization rate have been derived by dividing the property's net operating income by its sale price. So it just support our range.
On page 9, there is a table. Is this the assessment department's analysis of non-recoverable costs, or was this a rebuttal to evidence provided by Altus?
It was rebuttal to Altus. In our rebuttal, we identified 29 comparables,
Yes, I can read that.
and we came across a net operating expenses 1.06%.
On page 13 and 14, where did you get this information?
We talk about railroad, our
What was the
income
source?
expenses mailer, yeah?
So the owner provided this?
Yes, it's owner provided, and I pick in 2017.
Has it been altered?
No.
The uses that are in the building, which you've listed on page 2,
It was my assumption, yeah.
Um,
Page 2, yeah.
so what, do you know what any of these people do? Like, obviously, the law office makes sense. Do you know what Low Builders is? Is that office or retail?
It's retail. No, it's office.
Okay.
All office, and classical music studio, it's office.
Classical music,
Yeah.
don't they train students to play
It's office
instruments?
space, and by the way, I did inspect this property.
But it is music training, correct?
Yeah, it's office space, yeah.
Okay. The comparables, how much parking space does the subject have?
It has 15 spots.
Where are those spots?
We don't account our parking space already built inside our rent.
No, well, can you just identify where those parking stalls are? You've got a picture on page 2.
Parking spot, I can talk, if you open page 13, we have indoor parking space, 15 indoor parking space, and 2 outdoor parking space provided by owner. In our assessment, we don't account for parking spot, parking. And it assumes that parking inside rent, what we apply for this property.
Have you inspected this property?
Yes, and I inspected my own in 2015 January.
And have you been in the basement?
I've never been in basement, but I've been in a music studio.
Pardon me, where?
Music studio.
Music studio?
Yeah, I put them on the roll when I've been field
Oh,
assistant.
okay. Your comparables, which you've shown pictures for, they're all showing outside parking. So do they meet, generally meet parking code requirements?
When I pick my comparables for subject property, I was looking specific for lease start rate, square footage, in location close to subject property. I never account for parking spots.
You didn't account for parking?
No, because I look specific for lease.
But you have pictures, they all have on-site parking, correct?
In my assessment, we don't apply any parking for our estimation of
That's
market value.
wasn't my question. Your pictures, they all show outside parking?
Yeah, sure, take my picture here.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Ms. Nesbit,
Yeah,
questions?
I do have a question. I'm looking at your page 2. When I add up the area for the subject property leases, I get 8,182 square feet. But you're showing as a leasable square area of 7,234. So I was just wondering, what is the difference?
Yeah.
Well, I know what the difference is.
You're
The
right,
difference is
I did
900.
mistake here, yes.
So what is the square feet?
Because when we look inside on page 14, builders occupied 1,306 square feet. Classical music occupied 1,664 square feet.
So the numbers on page 2 are wrong, the law
Yeah,
office number
yeah.
is wrong?
Yes, I did wrong for the office. It was very small. I did dig inside permits. So I find our permit shows that interior leasable area 7,183 square feet. Our square footage outside perimeter.
Okay, that accounts for that
Yes.
50.
Yes,
So
and plus we account only for main floor. We never account for basement, where is parking spots and indoor parking.
Okay. Okay,
It's we account inside rent
okay.
in our estimation. It's built-in. It exists and
This
can be
was,
used.
this was built in 1976.
Correct.
Has there been, it's still in its original state from 1976?
It was, one second. Yeah, it was interior, it was alteration, mechanical, electrical and plumbing was done in 2014. It's what permit showed. Where's my permits? Yeah, it was done.
I'm sorry, that was mechanical?
Mechanical, plumbing, electrical, for, was done in 2014, for 1099 Henderson Highway. Because it's two buildings together, 1101 Henderson Highway, alteration for electrical, plumbing was done in 2004, and also was renewed iteration in 2018. It's law office, it's owner occupied space.
Okay. Did I hear you say it was 2 buildings?
Yes, when we're going to permits, in permits we have two different buildings,
Okay.
1109 1099 and 1101,
So the permit you have covers both buildings?
both buildings, yeah.
But the work that was done was specific to the 1099, Henderson?
1099 was done in 2014,
Okay,
and 1101 was done in 2004, and also was extra iteration in 2018.
okay, thank you. I just have one more question about your cap rate. You're using a cap rate of 6.7. It's at the, close to the 20th percentile, kind of at that lower end. Can you explain to me the factors that went into selecting that cap rate?
Cap rate selected its location, age of building,
Mhm,
because it's estimated, it's mass appraisal.
mhm.
It's estimate all sale around, not just this area, all city, but for this specific city, area, very important location, age,
Is
age
it-
of building.
Is this considered a good location?
It's more middle. It's not best location, but it's good location, but building 9079.
Mhm.
It's Henderson, it's heavy traffic, it's good location for business,
Thank
for
you.
commercial property.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Davis?
I have a question. I'm just looking to sort this out. On the financial statement and rent roll on page 13 and 14, and then I'm looking at the same time on page 3, the 3 tenants, one of which is the owner who appears to be the majority of the space. How did the rent of 1327 come about per square feet for the owner?
Tenants occupy, if you put together on page 14.
Yeah, I can see the tenants.
2.97, yeah.
But the 1327 for the largest leasable area, 4,437, which is the law office, the owner. Where does the 1327?
We just can look leasable area. Leasable area 7182.
Was it,
4.3.
Sorry, what are you calculating here?
Just by looking what owner provide to us,
like May,
what space they occupy. They provide 2 tenants square footage and provide a total leasable area of this space. It's 4.3
yeah, but what I'm asking,
thousand.
I know what the leasable area is, I can see that. And I can see on the financial statement and rent roll, it declares the total rental income, and then he lists what the other tenants are paying, his actual tenants. Writing's really small, but 1306 or 13, I guess it's, yeah, like there's there, but and the other one, the major one, is owner occupied, so is this just a back out calculation
It's
of
backup
yours to get
calculation,
at 1327?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so it's just the residual, so to speak. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Just so I'm sure I know what I'm looking at, the photos on page 2. The right-hand photo shows 1099 and 1101. And we're only dealing with 1099, correct?
Because this property has 3 address, 1099, 1101, and 201 Oakland Avenue, but it's for 1 rows.
Sorry, what do you mean by it's 1 rule?
It's a floor plan. 1101 square footage. 1099 with music studio and builders. 101 Oakland. They have different address, but it's 1 roll number for us.
So
They have one, yeah.
so the back part of that structure
Mhm.
is the third address?
Yes,
So,
where is builder located, office located.
okay, so 1099 has 3 tenants in it.
Ju-
1099, no, how do I relate 1099 to the orange?
1099, like just one tenant, it's music studio,
1099 is just the music studio.
just the music studio. 101 Oakland, it's LO Builders. And 1101 owner occupies.
Well, what is the subject of this application? The music studio?
Whole building.
The whole building?
Yeah,
Okay.
whole building
Three
has
city
3
addresses.
different addresses, address.
Okay, you only listed on your material the
Yes.
one address, it
Yes,
is actually
correct.
3 addresses.
Sorry, yes,
Okay.
so I confused.
All right,
But I guess we have same, when we look on,
okay, so
when
then,
we look on owner provided, he put address here instead of units, to distinguish.
oh, I see. Okay. So the roll entry is shown on the right-hand photo by the orange lines,
Mhm.
which includes the 1101, 1099, and 201.
Right.
Okay, now that's clear to me, sorry. The parking, this building has underground parking
Yes, correct.
for the tenants or for customers?
We have 15 spots for tenants because it's listed here indoor parking on reported to us, and 2 spots outside.
And that indoor parking comprises the whole of the basement
Correct.
of that
Whole
building?
basement.
Okay, so then, people who are coming to do business at any one of these 3 addresses find street parking in order to,
Yes, in this area, yes.
okay. Then,
Sorry, I have some concerns with your questions. You were asking the assessor a question about the parking use, and she did state she hasn't inspected it, and I will have different evidence to present, so as long as you understand that it's on that basis you're asking it, it's her assumption.
yeah,
I know the
Okay.
basement, same square footage as main floor. And how much parking, I know 15 here,
Okay.
what reported to us, I never been in basement.
I always assume you may have different information.
Oh, just as long as it's understood that it's an assumption that you're asking on the basis.
And your comparables, there's one I see that is a single-story building, that's the 1240 Main Street. The others are multi-story, they have on-site customer parking. Did you have trouble finding similar one-story buildings that don't have parking? Is that a relative rarity?
Because I was looking for 2017 lease,
Okay.
specific for lease was my target. And usually this type of building, we count 1 or 2 floor buildings across the city. Because you can see 1 floor building on page 15. It's on region,
Okay,
built same years.
those are my questions, thank you. Mr. Newfeld?
I have some rebuttal information personally.
You can have that. I'll try to go through it very quickly. Some of it you've seen, some of it's new. We like to freshen this up every week.
Lovely.
That's the same model my grocery store uses, fresh food every week,
Thanks,
not
Mom.
every day. There are two handouts. The first deals with the management fee, or as I call it, non-recoverables. The second deals with capitalization rates, and there's some overlap. Start off with this one. This is a brokerage. What we're just out to show you is that the city is on their own with their application of removing the non-recoverables. It's the Municipal Assessment Act does not provide for statutory assessments. It specifies market value. So a city assessor cannot make their own market value. That it will be determined by the market. So the first page is an example of what a brokerage company will present to their clients. The top row, now I blocked out the numbers here. There is a number of calculations here of rents that they put the term, the net rent, if there are allowances, landlord's work, free rent, et cetera. And this is so a landlord knows what his bottom line is. Those aren't my issue. The last one, net effective rent. So even after the adjustments have been made, every brokerage statement will then say to the landlord, we're taking another 7% off this, so this is how much money you're putting in your pocket, because we do have non-recoverables. And it's generally been very consistent with what has been practiced in the past, which is 2% for recoveries, for replacement reserve, and 5% for non-recoverables. Brokerage. Second page is the Appraisal Institute, and I took this from the U.S. Appraisal Institute because it was a pretty good article in terms of being able to describe the problem. We do operate on the same standards, and 1991 it was written. Nothing's changed since 1991. To be very clear, international valuation standards have not changed in any dramatic fashion since the early 20s. So here they describe the issues that an appraiser has to deal with. The Appraisal Institute is governed by watch for your non-recoverables. Page 4 is the IAAO standard on non-recoverables, and the statement here, the last sentence, or the last third last sentence, these multipliers and rates should always be extracted from actual income and sale price data obtained from properties that have recently been sold. So the IAAO doesn't specify a percentage. It tells you, go to the market and look for your numbers. Don't make them up. Page 5 is an excerpt from something that was presented to the municipal board June 28th, 2019. Now this was for a 2014 value, but that's irrelevant because the change to the city's position wasn't based on a different year or different data. It was based on a change in policy. So the policy before was this. The policy now has changed, but it not consistently changed. It doesn't, like I said, the year is irrelevant. They've made an artificial valuation model. That's the policy we're saying has to change. And in it, of course, this is a discussion of the non-recoverable operating expenses that show you how they've generally been calculated. The next page is another assessment brief prepared for the municipal board, and I've whited out certain areas. Now, when I produced this document, I was still reviewing the concept of appraisal reports and copyright infringement, because if I write an appraisal report, no one can use it without my written authorization. The exceptions are if it's been entered into evidence already, not in the assessor's hands, because there's just possession doesn't allow you to use an appraisal. But if you have voluntarily entered it before another tribunal, it then becomes not part of the common public domain. It becomes usable in other tribunals. So I have still whited out the names. So here's 3 pages from this, and this is for a 2012 value. Again, we're not that's an irrelevant point on the year, because this is the edict that we're dealing with. The page 7 describes how on a site-specific basis, the appraiser in this case calculated the shortfall from actuals. Didn't follow the model, but he also embraced the concept of how a shortfall is to be created. And it's a nice description. Talked about comparing this to market, which is the Johnson report. And this is all things that a normal appraisal will do. You notice in this case, this one was at $750 and he changed it to $1250. That's not relevant. The numbers aren't, it's the procedure. Page 8, the management expense. Now, this is based on applying the management expense, which is for the non-recoverable, and then the other expense, which the city is now claiming are non-recoverables, has always been structural repair allowances. So this is a standard procedure that we've always followed, and then it shows you how it's worked out. Now, in the assessor's brief, there is reference to, under their article, A Fresh Look, it references case law several times, municipal assessment case law. Now, I know this board has heard these cases before, but you haven't maybe heard all of the facts behind it. There are 3 case laws they cite. 2 of them, the board actually provided the non-recoverable rate. There was one where it was the only case that I'm aware of in the last 20 years where the municipal board failed to apply a management expense. It was 2184 McPhillips. The property was represented by our friends at Altus.
No, we weren't Altus.
You weren't Altus at that time. It was Dave Saunders, and he was working for the owner. And at the time, the city assessment department was overwhelmed, so they hired outside appraisers to handle this case. So this report came from Stevenson Advisors, has been entered as evidence, again, so it's fair ball. And the 2 were heard side by side. Now, the appraisal, an excerpt from each of them, page 9, page 10. As stated above, no actual financial statements were available for review. Now, I've had first-hand contact with this property in terms of the people writing it and the data that went into it. The city provided a lease and a rent roll, no financial statements. The valuation was made up on that basis. That's improper methodology. But it went on that basis, and because it was going to hearing, I guess they thought that it's not my fault, I'm doing my best job with the evidence I've been given to present, but no financial statements. Going back to what I've been saying earlier, for example, the IAAO, look at the actuals. Now, since this time, page 11, there's a missing sheet from the explanation the city gave you. There was actually a recalculation done as well, and you can see in this recalculation that the so-called management expense was actually came in on that order incredibly higher than the order. So this is 2188, where they actually applied a management expense. 2184 had no management expense. Now, since that time, I can tell you verbally, the precise words are important here. The person who wrote this information has recanted. This is an improper technique. They have given me an affidavit. This is my affidavit. Now, I can't read it into the record because there are going to be some ongoing legal issues, and not my fault. Apparently our city assessor is taking exception with this and has filed some claims against me. So is life. The best defense is the truth, and I'm fine with it. It's been recanted. So all this nonsense about following case law doesn't exist. I'm just showing you that this is just a change in policy, poorly supported. Now, a couple of other things on this management cost. And I thought this would be interesting for one of the members of the panel. page 12 and 13. This is a very current, from a couple of weeks ago, November 7th, submission by the provincial municipal assessor to the arm of Rosser in defense of a role. Page 13 clearly shows that there's a management fee of 5%, replacement reserve of 2%. Now, those of us who practice this a lot, we know that the authority for assessment is provincial. All work done by the city has been seconded under the City of Winnipeg Charter Act, giving them certain sub-rights to a provincial right. Now, technically, I don't think the provincial municipal assessor bosses around the city assessor. I don't know if it happens or not, but we are talking about a provincial authority that is in disagreement with a secondary user of this technique. Next, capitalization rates. Within the city's brief, they refer several times to the...
We're on to this?
We're on to the next one.
Okay.
We're on to the IAAO. Now, the first two pages deal with sales verification methods and what sales should be excluded. In the IAAO, for example, page 2, multiple parcel sales, acquisitions or divestitures by large corporations and REITs, sales involving government agencies, charitable, religious, or educational institutions. All shouldn't be done. Now, this is in ratio studies, mass appraisal, and the reasons are stated why they shouldn't be used. Page 3 is the city's cap rate comparables, which are also shown on the assessor's page 8. Briefly going through them. There are several properties where they are prohibited as use, they're being used as a capitalization rate. And on pages 8 to the end of the document are 4 annual returns. These are properties that are managed by Colliers, and each of these properties that I'm going to point out have been listed, and it says on them, on our information to the city, we expressly prohibit use of this data for the creation of capitalization rates or rates of return, as this data was not created for that purpose, nor was it produced for any sale or at the time of any sale. Reading from page 10. Consistently, we've done that. Now, we don't do that to thwart anyone's efforts, but we do not like misuse of data. It wasn't meant for cap rates, and specifically the ones they've used are completely improper usage of it because they don't represent a normal income producing property. And the city went ahead and ignored that they haven't checked with us, haven't asked us why don't we use it, nor have they done anything with it. They just went ahead and used it. So they've been warned, and they've ignored it. Now, the ones involved in that, 294 Portage, time of sale, 20% vacant, landlord was busy changing the gross rents to net rents. Income doesn't represent a cap rate sale. 177 Lombard has had a historical vacancy ranging between 18 and 30%. Right before sale, it finally filled up, it was sold, and the income the city's working on from the mailers doesn't show that, the final fill-up. 3401 Roblin is a government-involved purchase. They were the tenant, we sold the state. 3166, 3670 Roblin, prohibited from use as a cap. These were a portfolio sale on top of that. They were purchased under a DCF calculation, which meant that the existing income was never the point, never the reason that they were being sold or purchased. It's a 20-year project. Now, 394, 285 Maxwell, the city reported them to be renovation projects, which means they're not the same highest and best use. 333 Ward, we've heard this one to death, but the rate's 5.5. Our company sold it. I'm working on getting you some actual documentation, perhaps an affidavit or two. 90 Park Lane on the next page was a business purchase, end user. page 4 from their website, effectively bringing two successful businesses under the same umbrella. That's their typo, not mine. It's an end user purchase, not a cap rate sale. 225 Watt, page 4. The first picture at the bottom of page 4 is, you can see that it's listed for sale July 2016, and it's not industrial, it's a consulting building. Got that badge drawn. October 2018, after the sale, the signs are all down. Tenant is gone, user is gone, not a cap rate sale. 1100 Waverly, vacated by Manitoba Hydro, 6 years to reabsorb. The mailers the city were in possession of, we know because we sent them, were during a period where it was being reabsorbed to the market. Immediately after being reabsorbed, it was sold by a REIT, again, shouldn't be using those. And the lease structure was of the type that it was get you in cheap, but look at your renewals. The 6th to 10th year of the 10-year leases were where the money was going to be made. So the valuation on this wasn't a point-in-time capitalization rate, which incidentally was not what the city had. It was a working on a discounted cash flow. You do a cash flow for 5 years, you get your bumps, another 10 years, and then there's a couple of leases, for example, a tower, paid for their own tenant improvements, but on renewal, the rate charged to them was going to be market, not shell space. So that all goes in the DCF. So the actual earnings down the road on this as a long-term project are much, much higher. But it shouldn't be used as a simple cap rate sale. The other issue with that, it's not even industrial. It's retail and office, and there's all the users, so it's badge drawn. And the last thing I'm going to point out in my rebuttal is on page 7, and these are 3 definitions of market value. They come from the Appraisal Institute's standards book, and they produced 3 different ones. And we are not seeing these entered in evidence often anymore, and there have been too many times that things have strayed off the standards. But the key one that we often see is about a little bit below the middle of the page. The price represents the normal consideration for the property sold unaffected by special or creative financing or sales concessions granted by anyone associated with the sale. And for example, a renovation project is creative financing. Simple. Vendor take-back mortgages, creative financing. So I just want that one read into this sentence as we go through the work here, and that's my rebuttal.
Ms. Shable, do you have questions about the rebuttal?
I would like to point that there was introduction of new information. It's not acceptable. We have 2 weeks time frame to present evidence. I don't have any rebuttal for my specific brief, so I object all information.
Well, everything I brought up was a response to what's written in this document.
We have 2 weeks.
No, I'm sorry, that's not the rule. I spoke about cap rates, you presented a cap rate. I spoke about the IAAO, you have it IAAO. I talked about management costs, you have it in here. There's nothing in here that's wrong to do in rebuttal. If you want to hold that opinion, that's your business, but that's not the right way.
We will hold your opinion for just a minute. Ms. Nesbitt, do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
Ms. Davidson?
I have no questions.
And I have no questions, but I would like to take a short recess, and we will consider your comment. Okay, we will resume after our short recess. We will accept the information, the rebuttal information provided by Mr. Neufeld. We feel that it addresses matters that were raised in the city brief and discussion. So we will accept it, and of course give it the weight in the end that we decide is appropriate. So now, that's been the rebuttal. I think we were getting to your questions then.
No, I asked for it.
Okay, you did, your evidence, sorry,
My
not the
evidence.
questions, your evidence.
Okay,
Pardon my terminology.
you mean my questionable evidence? Is that what you meant to say?
Wait a minute.
I meant that in jest, of course. Okay, so I first inspected this property around 2003 or 4. The owner's a friend of my father's, and he was actually my dad's lawyer for the longest time. So he bought this building, and it used to be across the street in rented premises, and he liked the idea of having a basement parking. And when he got down there, there was an '84 Chevy station wagon parked there, and the building had shifted, the slab had shifted, it was about this high off the ground, and the station wagon was stuck, they couldn't get it out. So that went on for a few years, and eventually, I think I talked to his son, they had shaved it, they got the Chevy out, and they began using it for file storage. Last I spoke to him was a year and a half ago, and they weren't bringing cars down there because it was just too awkward. It holds several parking stalls, but it was being used for file storage. Now, what they did at the time, when they couldn't get the car out, and they knew it was no good for parking, on page 2, there's a lot behind them on Oakland. And I can tell you the roll number is 040000040000, something like that. We just heard it this morning, and there's only one number to remember. There's a 4 and a bunch of zeros. So they purchased this lot. It's now zoned C1 for accessory parking. They've had difficulties with the planning department. Accessory parking is a legal use under C1 zoning, and it was the concern whether or not it was a primary use. So they can only use accessory use parking. And there is one stall at the back. I think 2 is a bit of an exaggeration. The overhead picture, and I have to say that the assessors might show the angle a bit better. Page 2, right-hand side, you can see the ramp that goes down right beside the garbage truck. And there might be a room for 2 cars on the north of that site. Now, planning, which I have the planning, the bylaw, accessory parking requirements, page 115, sorry, page 11. Page 11. Now, there's 2 uses in here. Each use gets a different parking requirement. It's not one for the whole building. So there's an office use, which is 1 per 750, and then retail use and uses not listed, which would be for the music school, 1 per 250 square feet. Based on that, they need 7 stalls for the music and 8 for the office, a total of 15 stalls. Those stalls are met by the use of the lot on Oakland. Now, it's separately assessed. It was heard this morning. The assessment was $379. We did request a change to $194, and last year's assessment was $195. So we were kind of reasonable this morning. Don't know how it'll change. We'd like to have heard these 2 together. We don't have that option. So what we're trying to do is treat them as standalone, and in this case, our valuation, which ended up being $765,000, if one took it in conjunction with the $379 next door, comes to a value of $1,144,000, which is a reasonable amount to consider in totality for this project. If you did it on that basis, then I wouldn't even object to the assessor's rents, because then they would be fair, because her rents, as you can see in her brief, all have a lot of outside parking. But we don't. So we're dealing with this as a standalone. So while my number may look significantly lower than the assessed value, you have to take a look at it in conjunction with the lot next door. And this has given us a lot of problems with appeal in the past, and we often, there's a fairly checkered appeal history at the municipal board, and resolutions, and what it's always worked out to was a resolution considering both together, and we want to be clear that that's what we're looking for, but we don't schedule these hearings. So on a standalone basis, this is the value we're looking at. Now, the $11, first of all, we say the $8.54 is our calculation of the two other users. They're not arm's length in that one of the users is a client of the law firm, and the music school, I believe it's one of the employees is a daughter of the owner of the building. That might be arm's length enough, because if there weren't, there's about 80 buildings in Winnipeg where I would be arm's length from the operator. I've got, my daughter works at one and my son on another, you know what I'm saying? We're
Wondering
declaring.
how many children you have.
5, 6 grandchildren.
They're all working
I think the dogs, yeah, everybody. But the issue is we declare this involvement, and there's a relationship there. As a result, we do want to go look at the market, and on page 4, the market rents we have listed here are the ones we've been using last year, and we updated this year, and they are all across the city of Winnipeg. Our concern on rents has always been the same, is that the knowledge required to produce a clean rent means that there are fewer of them than people think. Now, as a person who works in a large brokerage firm, we get to see the deals. We have a property management firm, we get to see the leases and the costs and everything. Now, we agree with the assessor on one point is on the concept of what defines a net rent, and that is free of creative financing. So rather than just take any lease that may justify what we want to start with clean leases only. We could adjust these to show you a net effective rent, but my opinion is once you start adjusting, you lose the reliability. So I say toss them out, just use clean rents. And this is why we presented what we have. Now there are some ones from 1919 Henderson, which is down the street, and it's a Superior, it's a strip mall. One's a real estate agent, the other is I can't remember anymore. Those are still in effect, and those were actually renewed after the fact. I think they went $1 higher, that's post-reference. Jefferson, an office there, and there's a whole bunch in South Winnipeg which is going to have a better rate. In my experience of looking at these leases, the most comparable physical building is the third from the top, 2033 Portage. Now, this has a number of tenants in it. Their blended rate was 603 on all the tenancies, but it was upper level, lower level. The upper level was commanding rates of about $4 a foot, and the lower level was $8.50 in that ballpark per foot. And that's the most comparable building because it's a similar setup to this. It has more parking, but it has locational comparable qualities. In the city of Winnipeg, most of the higher rents will be generated near retail nodes. In Southwest Winnipeg is the strongest, then there's around St. Paul Center, around the shopping areas on Regent, and so on. And in between are the areas, call them transient areas, like the subject is in, where the rents are weaker. And that's what I was really looking for when I was looking for rents. We also, 1483 Pembina, which is a very interesting comparable, has more parking, and the nets in that one range from 9 to, I think we had one at 13 in this list, 9, and sorry, those are both at $9, and it's a walk up, so it's not ground level, but it does have parking. We ended up selecting a rate of $11 to deal with that vacancy. We're not using the city parameters at all. We're using the Johnson report, and the reason is that the data is better and it's transparent. So I forgot to bring it with us, but it breaks down by neighborhoods, by categories, and it has the complete inventory listed. So if you want to know if there's an anomaly, you can actually check and see. And one of the anomalies in the vacancy rates has been, for example, a large shopping center loses an anchor tenant, and it's going to throw off that whole sector. This gives us the chance to review it. Now, the person who wrote this put in 5.9% vacancy, and another, they did that by blending an office with Class C. That's not correct. The actual categorization of this would be miscellaneous office suburban, H5, 7.6%. Now, I'm not gonna change this because the number's not of great consequence to the overall value. Then is non-recoverables. As an owner-occupied property, we can't use the actuals because we don't know what's getting recovered and what isn't. We normally will go defer to the actuals. Yesterday, we had an actual non-recoverable of only $272, which we declared, because that's it. But generally, they're much higher than that. But we were trying to follow appraisal methodology, and our concern is the assessor is strayed, and we will just return to the theory and the way I was taught. Now, on page 41 to 45 is a study that we did earlier this year. These are all the Colliers managed properties, and we did not use any building with a gross or semi-gross rent, only ones that were net. And here's our range of recoverables. The summary is shown on page 45 at the back, and you can see that it went as high as the 30% area for some properties. Those are problem properties where there's high tenant turnover. In those cases, you would see a lot more tenant inducements and leasing commissions. Now, I don't care what the city says, those are non-recoverables. That affects the owner's pocketbook and is the definition of market rent. City disagrees, don't care. This is the way the market deals with it. However, the way an appraiser deals with it is to stabilize and say, we're not gonna have a bad year every year. Where's the proper target? And in our case, even though our mean was 12.8%, you can see that our curve line stabilized at 7%. A very strong support for a stabilized rate, 7%, which is what we ended up applying, 5% for non-recoverables, 2% for replacement reserve. And remember, in our study, the replacement reserve would generally be covered in capital and so not reported. So the number is 7% versus plus the replacement reserve. However, we also, as an appraiser, we have to go back to the way we were taught. And there was nothing wrong with the way we were taught. Now, in our case, what we're doing for structural reserve is applying a rate for the major components that require a reserve. Most all cases, it's the roof. A roof will cost, flat roof will cost $17 to $20 a square foot to fix. So in the case of the subject, that's $150,000 roughly. Now, the target, a roofer likes to replace them every 20 years, but generally it's every 35 to 40 years with a lot of work done in the interim. So a reserve is required for that. It's also HVAC units, rooftop units. Some cases, that work is split with the tenant. Some cases, the owner has to pick it up. And it's a variance on every individual lease. So that's why we stick with the roof as the prime illustration of a need for replacement reserve. Larger buildings, larger investment properties will go to percentages for this replacement reserve, and generally it's 2%. Shortfall, we're looking at actual. Now in this case, the owner is clear on what his costs are. So they were $62,170, and our reason for not using them, of course, in the non-recoverables is we didn't know what's recovered or not, but we do know what was spent. Now, 62,170 divided by their square footage is $8.65. Now, we've used $9.04, and the reason being is that we've adjusted the utilities upwards, I believe, because we're using the city's business assessment parameter, which is a stabilized number. just to be consistent from property to property, because if you have a vacancy, your utilities could be lower, or if you run a restaurant, they could be higher. So that's our reason for stabilizing in that way. And that's how we get $9.04. With our NOI of 64,998. Capitalization rate, this property is not investment grade. In the real world, it'd be very, very difficult for anyone to justify an appraisal based on the income approach. First of all, the degree of owner occupancy, and second, the type of building it is. The investors aren't clamoring to get a hold of these. Colliers has a study, and I've included on page 21 and 22 the initial material. This is the advertising blurb put out by the brokers, not by the appraiser whose name is there. And for 2018 suburban office, 6.5 to 7.25 was the amount. However, page 24 shows you why we wouldn't put it in, and that's the description of office. Even in a B, wide range of users, average range for the area, mix of national, regional, local lease covenants, size 50 to 500,000 square feet. So we fall well short of that. It's not investment grade. Were it to be investment grade, we would also have to adjust our rate calculation on page 26. Suburban office actually runs 7.5 to 8.25. That's because the calculation of these cap rates was done by brokers, not by appraisers. We worked out the adjustments by looking at our broker's actual numbers, because they put in closing costs such as land title fees and commissions. In the spring of this year, Colliers are merged with a purchase by our local office by the national company. Also allowed us access to their database, and we've had the opportunity to look at the national data on creation capitalization rates, and there is a difference of about at least half a point between what brokers call rates and what appraisers would call rates. So our range 7.5 to 8.25 on better buildings. There's written by me, page 29 and 30, on the issues that we would look at in the selection of the capitalization rate as to how we would pick one. And on page 29, suburban office, A, there aren't any in Winnipeg. B, buildings, there are 3 in Winnipeg. C, D, miscellaneous, there are lots of them. And generally 1 to 4 points higher than the scale we showed you on the other page. The issue with them is that many are semi-gross income, and it's not what investors are interested in. Have some actual capitalization rate sales of suburban office and suburban similar styles. Page 36, 905 Waverly. I had to go back and relook at this again, and finally figured it out what had happened there. It had been owned by Stantec. It was purchased. It was occupied by 24/7, and the owner purchased on the basis of their lease strength, and that owner is Neptune Properties, 7.93% for a better quality building. Next, 1799 Portage, mixed use, a little bit of office, a little bit of retail, some restaurants, and a bowling alley in the basement, 7.96%. My appraisal, my number. More suburban, 848 Jubilee, there was a conversion, small rate, 8.04, 819 Sargent, 10.8, impacted by poor neighborhood and the second floor that nobody wants. And those were the ones that we came up with on our suburban, close to suburban office. Now, even if one accepted those rates and our ranges, with the other problems with this property have to do with the parking on the other lot. So you need to purchase the other lot, which means it has to be a combined sale. It gives us a downward influence on cap on it alone. And the structural issue, the slab shifts. That's not good news. You have the option in this case, though, because it is a floating slab, of ignoring it. The grade beams around the outside are stable. So the basement is basically can't be deemed usable. So it's a major problem and yet a minor problem, which made us choose a cap rate of 8.5%. 765,000 is the value. And again, the lot next door was assessed at 379,000, so the total value of the package, as compared to the market, would be 1,144,000. That was my presentation.
Questions?
Yes, please. Please open page 5, 6, and 7. It's a Johnson report presented June 2018. It's post-referent, it should be.
Sorry, is that a statement or a question?
It's a statement.
Okay, well, make it a
It's
question.
June 2019, post-reference
You're making
date,
an
it should be
assumption.
avoided.
Perhaps you could turn that into a question to ask Mr. Iwao.
Okay. Your information on page 5, 6, and 7, when it was collected?
Most of the information was collected in late 2017 and the first 2 months of 2018. I spoke to Mr. Wayne Johnson, who compiles this report. Its publication date is about the 1st of June in 2018, which is why it's called the June 2018 report. He is a one-man operation, so he cannot compile this overnight. I'm very satisfied that all of it was compiled before April 1st, 2018. Mr. Johnson, I asked him the question, he said, yes, that is correct.
Okay, open page 4. You can see 5 line and comparables to 536 Main Street.
Sorry, what's the number?
4.
Yep.
Report. Line 5. We have similar comparables on 2556 Main Street. It's more statement, yeah, in 2018 for $16. I have another question. Would you agree that lease rates generally increase over time?
Well, your question requires some clarification. Do you mean when exposed to the market, or do you mean in terms of
on your page
a term?
4, we have bunch of lease comparables. It's lease started latest 2018 February and youngest September 2013. My question, would you agree that lease rates generally increase the period from 2013 to 2018?
And so this is on an original lease or a renewal of a lease, like the negotiation period, is that what you mean?
We have used presented lease between 2013 and 2018.
Right, but it's for the negotiation of a lease. You're not talking about step-ups, are you?
No, I talk
Oh,
about
okay.
your comparables.
Okay.
You know your comparables.
Okay,
better.
so generally in that time period, same-site leases decreased, but overall rates increased, because what happened is people aren't comparing apples to apples, as they say. In the marketplace, we had several new developments. For example, Seasons Tuxedo moved into the market, and then look at the Power Center developments and the things that are happening in the redevelopments. Those places are commanding higher rates. So it's not uncommon now to see rates between $20 and $30. But what happens is that the same site places, the strip on Pembina, the strip on Henderson, the strip on Portage, will have a harder time renewing or getting tenants that match the rates. Their rates are slipping. So the only answer to that is generally redevelopment. So the answer is same site down. New sites are higher.
On same page, we have Henderson, 1128 Henderson, lease built in 2015 for $13, and also in 2014, last to bottom line, 1999 Henderson, in 2014 for $30. So this lease will be in 2018 higher, yes?
No, as a matter of fact, 1128 Henderson, is undergoing a redevelopment on the property lot adjoining to it, 1122 Anderson, which was just heard this morning. And that site is having difficulties with vacancies and refilling, so it's had to become more competitive on their redevelopment sites. Exactly what I was saying earlier. The back they're hoping was just to repair it. Their front site at 1114 actually dropped its rent by 40% on its last renewal. So no, that's incorrect. They're on the same sites, and that one has went down. And the other one, 1919 Henderson, this has some step-ups in it. So this is the first lease negotiated. I haven't seen the renewals on any of these sites, on these office users yet. The reason these two were selected, of course, is we have their full financials, so we know that there's no creative financing involved.
So lease will be finished in 5 years, it will be finished in September 2018. Right now, it's new lease exists.
Yeah, and I haven't double checked to see if there's a renewal clause or renewal amount stated.
So we have to adjust this $13 to account for inflation.
Absolutely not.
Page 22. We look for first quarter 2018 capitalization rate, study of Colliers International. We look specific for suburban offices. Range 6.5%, 6.25%. Is our 6.7% rate inside this range, correct?
No, this is not for the same product. I explained that. I explained 3 issues with this. Firstly, they are prepared by a broker, not by an appraiser. The appraiser rate would be on page 26, the actual range being 7.5 to 8.25. The explanation of that is on page 25, where the Collier's brokers include land transfer title fees, brokerage fees, legal fees, expenses required after purchase, and they stabilize them in a different manner. We have the data in our hands, so we can actually make these adjustments. The second problem with this is our subject would never be within the definition of suburban office, as I explained, page 24 has the definitions. It's far too inferior. It would never be included in that study. That's for better product. Our subject is not better product. And then lastly was some explanatory notes on page 29, where there are only 3 buildings in Winnipeg that would actually fit this Collier's study for suburban office on page 22. 1661 Portage, 1780 Wellington. Forgot the other one, but actually there was one added to this. 1020 Lorimer. The other one was Keniston and McGilvery. Those are the only ones that fit the category. And I forgot, it's 4 because I added Lorimer to the list after I inspected it.
Page 42. 43. You did present that post-reference information, correct? December 18.
Oh, no, there was some typos here. There's 3 entries that were listed at January of 2019. That's a typo. They were actually, December 19 ones should say December 17 and December 18. The concept of post-reference deals with market information. These are costs.
Please open page 36, 37. It's only cap rate for office and retail rates. What is your base comparables here? The subject property.
I went over several of these, and quoted on several of them. 905 Waverly, 1799 Portage, 848 Jubilee, 819 Sargent, and those were the primary ones I pointed out earlier in my presentation.
It is true that cap rate in 2013 completely different compared to 2018 effective rate date of our market estimation. It's not true.
No, I disagree. They're not completely different.
That not very good comparables.
Well, you can express your opinion, but if that's a question, I would say no, they're fine comparables. The capitalization rates became more aggressive and the market more competitive beginning about 2003, and that plateaued out about 2012, and there were minor variations. Then beginning around 2016, 17, we started to see some slippage and various. But the reasoning for this was not due to market-based issues, it was a reporting problem. There was a period of time where people who didn't have the proper abilities, experience, and knowledge were reporting capitalization rates, particularly in brokerage, and that showed an accelerated market, that showed a more aggressive market. And the typical one had to do with multifamily, where conversion rates for properties that were converted were often misquoted. And in the retail world, there were several, I know of 15 retail properties that were just like renovation projects. So you can't cite those. And when those got finished and done, there were no more properties like that to declare, so that's why the rate then went up. But it was all about a reporting problem, and take you back to the highest and best use. Got to make sure it's the same. Those were never the same. So that's outside of my control. I can tell you that as an appraiser who's been certified for 14, 15 years, and something like that, and counting. I haven't applied a significant change in capitalization rate since likely 2000, maybe 11 or 12.
Page 53, 44. We see here industrial rates. My question, cap rate for commercial property tend to be lower than for industrial property, don't they?
My judgment is that a cap rate for retail should be slightly lower than, slightly lower similar to certain types of industrial, but significantly lower than the manufacturing type.
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Nesbitt, questions?
No, I have no questions.
Ms. Davidson?
I had a couple questions. Your ask is on this building, because we're hearing this. You indicated the lot, because you don't have parking within this building, that you have that separate.
That's correct.
So you mentioned you had that hearing, and your ask was $379?
No, my ask was $194.
And was it assessed at?
$379.
Okay, so your ask was $194.
I mean, our target, to be clear, when we started, was to look for a value, either, of the total of the two combined, 1144, and I don't know what they've decided next door.
Okay.
You want me to phone and ask?
No, I don't think they'll tell you.
No, you got it entered yet? Got it entered yet?
Waiting for the mail.
Okay, so that was to be clear, and this is just clarification. Your comps and the comps in the assessor's package, all of those have parking as part of the building?
Yes. I think the ones that I've discussed with you are all, have fairly good parking. The one I did point out that didn't have the greatest parking was the third line and 2033 Portage, and that's a blended rate of up and down. It's more like 4 and 8, $4 for the upper level, $8, 4 for the upper, 8 for the lower, and it has only, I think, 7 parking stalls.
Okay. And then this is a general question. This office, you're describing it as, you know, not ideal, but, and, you know, in terms of the type, is it like what type of class or whatever it would be? And then sort of generally in the city and in this particular market area, what is the not necessarily the exact number, but the overall vacancy rate? Like, presented a vacancy rate for this, but
Yeah.
like in terms of competition, like is there a lot of this type of property office out there? Is there a little?
There's a fair amount. If you, when you drive down the street and you see a for lease sign, it's usually gonna be for a miscellaneous suburban office.
Like this
in-
kind of
Yeah,
thing.
in the area, you know, and as an example, the assessor, I noted in the brief, page 20, that ground floor office for lease, Roswell Realty, 1,983 square feet. So it's a fairly poor product in the market, and I was gonna save this for closing, but I'll answer it this way. The method we would usually use to value properties like this is gonna be more influenced by the direct comparison approach, because we're gonna be selling this to an end user more than we will as an investment property. And in the city, this style of office, you know, the number we have on it for an office without parking is probably $110 a foot, 105 a foot in that ballpark. And that's about what you would expect. Northeast quadrant will be performing worse, strongest performers in the southwest quadrant and in developed areas. A poor product in the southwest, for example, would be 150 versus this one, which we're saying is about 105. And the southwest would top out nominally at around 180, 190 a foot. There've been some extreme examples that went for 240 a foot. There's an auction in Dovercourt where there's a lot of land for redevelopment. And there's only been 2, 3 of that higher rate, but we're generally looking at the direct comparison as a 100 to 150 a foot for this type of owner-occupied building, and we're at the lower end of that range. Now, we don't use it, and the reason we do that is because there's no such thing as a 6.7% cap rate. There's no investor who's looking for 6.7%. That's a number people put in because they're trying to match what the direct comparison should end up doing. But these small miscellaneous offices in the suburbs, we had a whole pile of them on Wednesday night, would generally be valued on a per square foot. I could probably think of about 15 or 20 that we've appraised for sale in the last little while. I should say, no, there was another hot market, Cord and Old Banks and Cord, and really sell well. But the last one I looked at with a client was on Pembina, and I think their ask was 130 and no bites.
Okay, that gives me a sense. Thank you. Thank you very much.
How long have the tenants that are in the building been there?
I want to say 99, 2001, the owners had it.
So they have renewed multiple
Oh, the
times?
tenants? No. Before the builder was in, and there was an accountant in that space, and it was the owner's brother. And before the music store was in there, there's a pizza restaurant. And that was an arm's length tenant, and they didn't renew. That was the only arm's length tenant they had. I think there were some problems with they didn't want to keep dealing with the exhaust system, costly to run. That would have dated back say 2013 or so.
And neither of the tenants have come up to the point of renewing yet, or have they?
No, it's, to be honest, the owner was happy to have the building full with people he knew, or empty and just use himself. That's his preference. He just doesn't want trouble with tenants. So,
Okay. So with respect to the parking, you're saying that if someone was to purchase that building, they would have to purchase the parking in order to meet parking requirements?
they would have to satisfy the planning department that they had adequate parking. Now, there are waivers in some cases where if you don't change your usage and don't require a new occupancy permit, that you won't trigger a code review. So, for example, if he sold it and another lawyer used it as an office, they might not be subject to a code review. But if an insurance agent, no, it might be the same class. Anything in the zoning document that would be a different use class would then trigger a code review, and then there'd be that. Now, they could make a request and say, look, you've allowed this for 35 years that I'm using street parking, and but I've also made an arrangement for 5 stalls here and 4 stalls here. That's how you get passed. In his
So
case-
would a, sorry to interrupt, but would a new owner want to have that parking in
They
order
need it.
that?
Absolutely need
He's
it,
not
yeah.
forcing his
No,
customers to park on the street?
No, it absolutely would need it, there would be no way anyone would be interested in acquiring it without the parking resolved.
Right. And by the way, you noted that there was the appeal on the parking lot this morning.
Yes.
You may recall a case a year or so ago where we had a parking lot, a condo building behind the concert hall, where when we determined that there was an appeal on the parking lot and an appeal on
Yeah.
the property that the parking lot revenue was being attributed to.
Right.
I called a halt and essentially combined those two appeals. If you see something like that, I think it is much preferable, and that you certainly should feel free to raise it with Visa Hutter and.
This has been a very difficult year for trying to put these together, and the answer we always get is that it's the poor assessor, because they need 2 different assessors on the same job. And what we try to do in most cases is talk to both of them. Did you see Maricare this morning? So we have another one coming up. So.
Well, it makes the role of the board a little bit difficult.
Right.
It's almost like we have one hand tied behind our back, but at any rate, that's a comment on the comment.
Well,
that you made.
every year we've had it, I have about 5 or 6 properties like this. We work out our numbers in advance and we declare what our interest is and whether the assessor's afraid of us appealing and picking them off one by one, we've never done it because this is, goes to credibility. It's not what we do.
Okay, that's all my questions. That concludes this one. Thank you very much. Yes, we will take a short break. Okay, we will resume with 755 Henderson, and we need to have Mr. Bedford sworn in.
Yes.
Would you like to affirm or swear? Okay, please state your full name.
Douglas Becker.
And you swear the evidence you represent is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Ms. Shable, whenever you are ready.
File number 19-3954. Room number 02011367000. Address at 755 Henderson Highway. Owner is Henderson Business Center Limited. We are valuing the property as it stands on January 1st, 2020, based on economic condition April 1st, 2018. This appeal is with respect to the amount of the assessed value only, based on evidence in this report. It is assessor opinion that the market value of subject property as April 1st, 2018, $4,422,000, and that the 2020 assessed value should be confirmed. The subject property is located northeast portion of the city of Winnipeg on page 12, 13, and 14. We can see subject location map and air photo. It's located in southeast corner of intersection Henderson Highway and Helmsdale Avenue, or between Helmsdale Avenue and Kimberley Avenue. The subject site has forest and rectangle shape of 28,494 square feet. Subject property doesn't have basement. The three-story building was constructed in 2016. We did apply effective year as 2012. The effective years has been moved back to bring the rent in line with the market rent for all the office space, because there is low demand for new office space in this area. Also, during my rebuttal, I came across that we have to apply a lump sum deduction has been made for unfinished shell space in 2016 by 2018, but in 2020 we should apply this reduction. I have new market.
Distributed? You have multiple copies?
Yes, for 641.
Is this rebuttal or I'm not sure?
No, it's part of my presentation.
Change of the valuation?
Yes. I have inspected this property in September 7, 2017, and put this put this building on the roll. I did apply this lump sum deduction for unfinished shell space, and by today we still have end of 2017. This building still has unfinished shell space not occupied. Please open page 21 on my brief.
Mr. Chairman, this value is higher than the other one.
I
I'm
will
assuming
come
that's
to
gonna
it.
get
I will come
explained.
to it, don't worry. On page 21, we can see vacant space on 15,101
It's all
square
right,
feet.
where are you finding that?
It's
on page?
On page 20.
Vacant, oh, I see, huh?
Vacant space, it's still not occupied, it's still a shell space. The cost per square foot of finish the space is estimated to 29% of total cost per square foot. It's according to Marshall's evaluation service. The resulting rate of just under $15 per square foot has been applied for this $15,000.
Sorry, what's that amount?
$50.
$15?
50. 50.
I'm sorry, for how much square feet?
15,101. It's still vacant space in 2017, because our effective date April 1st, 2018. So my deduction, you can see on bottom line, will be applied $754,822. I already mentioned that effective years bill was moved from 2016 to 2019, to bring rent in line with this area office space. So we did estimate our rent $15.81. I did presented 9 comparables. First line, it's subject property. We start date, it's our effective date. First April 2018. We apply leasable area of 23,894 square feet by $15.81.
Can I just stop you there for just a second? Sorry, I just want to reconcile things that we have here for a second before you carry on so that I can make sense of what you were then saying. Give me just a minute. Okay, that's fine.
Nine comparables. A lease started in 2016-2017. Leasable area between 900 square feet to 4.6 thousand square feet. Our mean of net rent per square foot $15.52. In our median $16.50. So our $15.81 below median, it's fair. Let's open page 21. We did apply $15.81 because with this rent, this building will be occupied, normal occupied, and it will have 5.5% vacancy rate. On page 21 on notes, we can see that office space for this building $20 they asking, and a warehouse space lease for $70.24. It's warehouse space. And $20 office space. We did apply $15.81. If owner would ask low rate, it will be full occupied, so we can apply easily our 5.5% vacancy rate for this building. It's in my estimation. We also account allowed for not recoverable expenses, include general 2% allowance, that include advertising, promotion, professional fees, structural repairs, etc., and shortfall allowance per square foot to account for not recoverable expenses during time of vacancy. $7 per square foot. Our net operation income $341,000. We did apply capitalization rate 6.55%. Please open page 6. It's a suburban B office space with 20 percentiles to 18 percentiles, range 6.2 to 7.3%. Our overall capitalization rate 6.55 inside this range. It's very well supported by Colliers, CBRE, Cushman Field. They have inside this range too. Also, we provide some support information on page 9 for office space. I would like to mention that it not mean to be comparable specific for the subject property, but to illustrate the accuracy of the model. It's between 5.1% and 6.54%. On page 22, started my office with rent comparables. Comparables on region in 2017, smallest space rent for $18.60 and bigger space for $17.07. On Henderson Highway, I presented two leases in 2016 and 17 for $16.50 and $16. On page 24, lease on St. Mary Street for $17 per square foot was signed in 2017. And page 25, a lease on Main Street for $12.57. On page 26, for $17 on Jefferson. On Henderson Highway, two leases signed in 2017 and 16 for $13.56. It's very well supported and shows that our rent $15.81, it's fair. Based on evidence in this report, in this assessor opinion, that the market value of subject property as of April 1st, 2018 will be $4,447,000. But so the assessed 2020 assessed value of $4,422,000 should be confirmed.
Question?
Yes, okay, on your, you showed the rent roll on page 20 and 21. The first lease was in August of 15, and then the next one was in June of 16? Okay, and on page 21, you show that there's 15,000 square feet still vacant.
Yes,
At
correct.
the end of 17. So your original assessment, you allowed 15% vacancy, which I think is your max, right? That you're allowed to under your department?
Because previous assessor was decision that to account for this empty space, he increased vacancy rate.
But that's for vacancy. If it's vacant, you don't allow rent, right?
In my case, we specifically made reduction of effective years billed to bring rent down. With this rate of $15.81, building will be full occupied and will be have only 5.5% vacancy, standard for this type of building. It's my position.
Even though it's 50% vacant.
It's my position about rate. If would,
I guess what you're suggesting is that it's getting $15.81 for everything, and by allowing just standard vacancy and an allowance of 700 and some thousand, the value should be actually higher than what it was when it had a 15% vacancy.
in my case, low rent, ask for low standard vacation rate. If would be assessed more higher,
Where is the rent? Okay, if I'm on your new paper, page 4, your rents are $17.56, $17.56,
on bottom and bold, I put average rate.
But these rents are all considerably higher than a standard OFS on Henderson Highway, are they not?
This lease is for 2012 years built.
2012?
Yes.
Well, I'm not sure, what do you mean by 2012?
The effective years built was, original building was built in 2016. We have reduced years of build to 2012 to bring the rent in line with the market rent for this type of buildings in this area.
2012. you use leases from 2012? Is that what you mean? I don't
Because
understand.
we have a mass appraising model.
I know, but you've adjusted the mass appraisal model to what you
Yes.
feel is correct.
Yes, because
So where
more,
did you get the
more
rents?
older building, less lease rate applied for our suburban offices.
Is there any other building that we're gonna do today, because this is all pretty well around, same, that are even close to $15.81 a square foot?
You can see my comparables.
Okay, let's do that. Let's go to your very last comparison.
My 9 comparables, median my comparables came across $16.50.
Okay, let's go to the very last one on page 20. Page 27. This property is actually under appeal today. This one here, you have a lease on the main floor at $12, and on the second floor, $13.36. Did you know that the second floor is actually occupied by the person that bought that building in 2016? And that's a book rent that they put on it? You have the rent roll.
Yes,
Okay, so you're not aware of that, correct?
it's reported to us once I can make it.
I'm just asking if you knew that that company up there, RCS Insurance, was the owners of the building.
Each plus Air Block Canada occupied main floor, size 2012, they put extra, no, 2017. They occupied 1,060 square feet.
I'm just asking, did you know that the people that occupy the second floor were the owners of the building and that they bought it in '16 and that it's a book rent? I'm just asking a question. If you don't know it, that's fine.
For me, it's lease, it's provided to us in the record.
Oh, I agree with that, but did you know it was owner occupied? No?
If you know. I
I'm
don't
just
know
asking if
this,
you know, you
no.
did not know. So you picked 1581 out of your comparisons per square foot, even though it's a building that's having trouble leasing. It's been ready for lease for 2 years as of the reference date, almost 3 years. And it's over 50% vacant, and you still think it should get a rent of $15.81.
$50, yes.
None of your comparisons are even close in that size, they're on page 3. Like your first comparison is only 900 square feet and you got $18. The next one's 1,200 square feet at 17. Like the largest lease you have is 4,650 square feet, is 1,257. I'm just curious where 1581 comes from.
It's model generated lease for 2012 effective years building. My comparables support this rent.
To 1581.
Yes, correct.
Are any of
Media
your,
of my 9 comparables came across $16.50.
but are any of them similar in size?
I was look for leases specific 2016, 2017 in this area, close to this building.
Okay,
What available for them?
I just find it hard that you can take a building that's over 50% vacant, then all of a sudden make it 5% vacant, and then make an allowance for a part of it that's unfinished, like, that, I have no more questions.
Ms. Nesbitt?
Okay. So I just I'm still not clear as to what's happening here. So maybe I can just tell you what I think. You originally had on this property an assessment of $4,422,000, correct?
Correct.
Then you passed out this new page. And this new page, with all your adjustments, brings us to $4,447,000.
Yes.
Then I heard you say, I think, that you'd like a confirmation of $4,422,000.
Correct.
So this page has nothing to do with your valuation
this-
that is under appeal today.
This page showed about lump sum deduction. It was on applied for this property. I missed this in first place when I did submit this report, because I put this lump sum on this property for vacant space.
But you didn't on this value.
Yes, because it's, we have only 2 hours for property, so I missed this, but I have, during rebuttal, I confirm this property should have lump sum deduction for vacant space. So I bring my new estimation, but this my estimation when I applied this lump sum deduction came across same what you already asked to confirm. My job today is to analyze the market evidence and determine the best conclusion of market value. My opinion, conclusion is,
This new value.
yes, it's, but it's very close what we ask in cost assessed.
So despite you bringing this and all your evidence for this, you're sticking with what's on
Yes.
this?
Because it's very close and less than 5%.
Okay.
If it would be more as 10%, yeah, maybe we would ask for increase, but not in this case.
Okay. So the building was under construction, and it was, I'm thinking I'm following, there was no assessment on the piece that was under construction, is that correct, or?
This building was finished in June 15, 2016.
June 2016. Okay,
Yes.
I'm just tracking the
Mhm.
dates in my
Mhm.
notes. So it was finished in June 16,
Yes,
brought on the roll when?
and on June 15, 2016.
June 15, 2016.
In 2016 was shell space 17,000 square feet.
Pardon me, say that again?
And 2016,
2016. For the-
16.
Is that for the 2018 reassessment?
Yes.
Okay.
it was 17,089 square feet shell space.
Shell space. So it was pretty much empty. It was empty.
No, it was occupied, second floor and main floor, part of main floor.
Okay.
It's, yeah,
So 17089, was that the?
in 2017,
Yeah.
it was 13,370 square feet.
Okay.
But for 2020 assessment, I used 2018, it's 15,101 square feet of shell space. We did apply $15 for each square feet to finish this space, shell space. So we give deduction for assessed whole assessment.
Okay. I think I understand.
Ms. Davidson, question?
Not at this time, thanks.
Hey, on page 2, you show 4 leases. So currently there are 4 leases in the building. I'm trying to relate that to the premise IDs with variable leased areas and lease amounts, which is much more than 4. What is the relationship of these two tables?
Two tables, I just showed what exists lease here. Just for me important lease net rent, you can see that just example of lease, just try to use rent roll. and
No,
put
but
on-
sorry, on page 2 though, you show the 4 leases
Mhm.
that exist.
Yes,
That comprises roughly half the building.
yes.
Here, you show 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different lease rents and different areas. And you come out with 1581 as the average or the median, whichever it is. What are these 11 versus these 4?
For example, third floor has 3 offices. One of them occupied by dental corporation, but 2 still empty. It's part of shell space. Because,
So those empty spaces are demised? They are,
divide how many offices inside each floor. In moment by inspection in 2016.
all right, well, subject perhaps to clarification by Mr. Bedker, I'll leave it at that.
And also, I would like to mention, total square footage showed in page 21, 25,633 square feet. 25,000, but we assessed around 24,000 square feet. So when this space will be occupied, we will be adjust leasable area. Because first it was best, what will happen.
Yeah. On page 3, at the top, we see that 755 Henderson is shown as 23,894 square feet, which is a substantially higher number than any of the numbers below.
It's
Right.
a whole leasable area, it's not divided by, it's overall. I showed $15.81, it's overall for any space in whole leasable area.
Okay,
When you divide by small space rent more higher. the
Economy of
big
scale.
Economy of scale, yeah.
all right. Subject
But
perhaps to some-
leasable area should be adjusted in future.
All right, that's all my questions. Mr.
Okay.
Bedker,
I'd
you're
like to first make a comment. To me, that wasn't a rebuttal, that was new evidence. It was a new valuation that we never saw before or even had a chance to deal with until this hearing. I don't think it's proper, but I'm not gonna argue.
At any rate, it doesn't seem to be
It's
in
not-
use
No.
because of the value that's on the roll.
Right. Okay, the original assessment we have on page 9 of our report. Now, this was the value that was put out by I understand the model. It was for 23,894 square feet with a total potential income of 377,894, which is exactly what the Schwab showed on page 4 and on page 5 of the handout that she handed out. So those are all model-driven rents. That's why you see different premises here, because the model puts different numbers to each one. And they were given it a 15% vacancy, because at the end of 2017, it was over 50% vacancy. So there's the 15% vacancy for loss of rent, meanwhile there were 50% loss of rent. Now, we talked to the owner, because the 2020 assessment is supposed to be based on April 118 market, but physical condition as of 2020. We talked to the owner, and the only units, and we have this listed on page 6 of my report, that he would perceive would not be finished at the end of December 19. So for 2020, were the units that I show there, which is 101, 102, 205, and 301. So unfinished as of January 1, 2020, 11,000 square feet, again pushing close to that 50% vacancy. The unfinished units, the demised walls, if you want to turn to page 11. This is what they look like. So they got concrete floor, drywall on the sides, open beam ceilings, and they have to be finished from there. We had done, or what I had done in my report, is I took the 11,020 square feet of unfinished space, and I applied $50 for unfinished. And that's on page 6, and then I took that off the assessor's value of $4,442,000. I didn't change the vacancy, because if I did, it would go higher. It would be closer to 50%. We don't usually allow, because it does take time to fill it up, but this building's almost 2 years old as the reference date. And to now suggest that the value of the property should actually be higher, with only allowing a 5.5% vacancy when it's over 50%, I don't understand. I don't know where that comes from, or how that even could be justified. So I'm asking the board just to make an allowance for the unfinished space of $50 a square foot. That's on page 6. That's using the assessor's rent, the assessor's vacancy of 5.5, and I asked for a value of $3,871,000.
Questions?
No questions.
Ms. Nesbitt?
No,
Ms. Davidson?
I have no questions, thank you.
Just one. What direction can we take from the municipal board about using actuals, specific information about the property versus market?
Well, when I was the other assessor, and we were following IAAO standards, they always said for doing a mass appraisal, you use the CAM, or the computer-assisted model. But when you're fighting it in an appeal basis, you use the specific. It's late, try it.
Yeah.
So, but one other thing with the municipal board is they usually don't allow more than 25% vacancy, but they will allow more than 15 on special occasions. I think when the builders built this, when they put it in, it is really overbuilt, I think, for the area, if you look at it. It's really, when you're driving down Henderson, it kind of hits you there. But I didn't think they were thinking it would still be 50% vacant after December of 18.
So, maybe to clarify, you can have vacancy of built space, finished space.
Right.
This is unfinished
Correct.
space. How unfinished is it? Is it finished short of normal tenant improvements, or is it substantially unfinished?
It's basically, those pictures are exactly what it's like right now. And I guess there's one other thing. If you go to page 21 of the assessor's presentation, you'll notice that under notes for number 2 there, it says Dr. Kurt Perry Dental Corporation. Now, they had a 10-year, 6-month lease, and they were given $92,975 to finish up the space. That works up to $25 a square foot, based on like tenant inducements just for that space that the landlord takes. So I'm not exactly sure what the cost will be. We use 50. We're our office in the Richardson building. We increased our space a couple of years ago. It was over $100 for build-ups. So the $50 we thought was fair.
Okay, thank you very much. We will move along. Next on our list is 2121 Henderson Highway. Ms. Table, when you are ready.
File number 19-2204. Roll number is 0400149460. Subject property located on 2121 Henderson Highway. Owner Alan Minister Canada. Register owner Gospel Missionary Union of Canada. Size 2093. The subject property is located at northeast portion of the city of Winnipeg. This is on page 13 and 14 of my report, where we can see subject location map and air photo. It's located northeast corner of intersection Henderson Highway and Northwest Avenue. We are allowing the property as a standard January 1st, 2020, basic economic condition April 1st, 2018. This appeal is with respect to the amount of the assessed value only. Based on evidence it is reported as assessor opinion that the market value of subject property is $1,008,000. But 2020 assessed value of $937,000 should be confirmed. The subject size has a rectangle shape of 11,714 square feet. Leasable area of this building, 5,000 square feet. On page 2, from income expenses mailer, I posted two free leases, one of them owner occupied. And we have two tenants, Teach Young, 1,000 square feet for the occupied size 2013. Snowman Manitoba occupied 2,500, size 2016. On page 2, on page 2, I did present 9 comparables. First line subject property, assessed in April 1st, 2018, 5,000 square feet. We did apply $11.95 per square foot. My 9 comparables presented on map on bottom. A red dot, it's our subject property. So mean of this comparable $15.52 and media $16.50. On page 3 and 4, we have income stream for office space. This property's owner has exemption, school tax exemption. That's why it's presented in our premise 2A33A, 2,500 square feet. We did apply $11.92. On page 4, we have two premises, 2289 premise and 2291 premise. It's for 2 tenants in same building. So distinct, but on page 5, summary of our rent. So we need to go to page 6, where I did my estimation. So I did apply $15 for 5,000 square feet. Our potential rent came across $75,000. We did apply 5.5% vacancy, that's standard for this type of properties. Also, we allowed for not recoverable expenses, including 2% expenses allowance that include advertising, promotion, professional fees, structure repairs, etc. And also shortfall allowance per square foot to account for not recoverable expenses during time of vacancy as $7 per square foot. Our capitalization rate for this property is 6.7. that inside range of, on page 7, between 6.2 and 7.3%. That also supported on page 10. 5 actual leases, actual sale on Portage, Lombard, Henderson, Notre Dame, and Rowland. So, rounded assessed value, in my opinion, 1,008,000. It's my recommendation to confirm 937,000. Thank you.
Questions, Mr. Dunbar?
Yes. The building was built in 1978.
Yes.
Are you aware that it has no elevator?
Check. It doesn't facilitate that.
Okay, so I'm just curious where you got the $15 from based on your comparisons. If I look at the buildings that are closest to your subject, to the subject in age, on page 2, the bottom 2 rents you have for 230 Henderson, which was built in 1979. The rents are $12 and $13.36. This building also does not have an elevator. So it's 1 year newer, but no elevator. I'm not sure, like, the ones that you have for $17, 930 Jefferson, that's a multi-story building, and I know it has an elevator, because my dentist is there. The next one is at 2536 Main Street. That's a fairly new building with the chiropractor, et cetera, in it, insurance company. That one has an elevator. 551 Regent, I'm not sure if I know that one. That's a strip mall. There's some retail in there as well, correct? Is that retail or is that office building?
It's office space.
On 19, on page 19, at the bottom there, that's office?
Yeah, it's office space.
And there's a retail in there as well, and restaurant?
Yes.
Okay, do we know which one the rent came from? Oh, that's okay. No, that's okay, I'll carry on. You had agreed earlier, with the chairman, that there's economy of scales. The larger the space, the lower the rent. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's correct.
Okay, so on your page 6, where you come up with a new value of $1,000,008, you're saying that this property should be in at $15, correct? With a 6.7 cap. Originally, you thought it should be in at, well, it's a combination, be closer to, I'm not exactly sure what it was, but with a 5.7 cap.
Correct.
Okay. I have no further, oh, just one question. On page 2, the actual leases that are in place, the Tech, Beyond, and Snowman, they're actually gross leases, aren't they? If you look at your mailer, if you look at page 17.
Yeah, I check mark groceries.
Okay, so the actual leases are gross then
Yeah,
for those
and
2 tenants?
I didn't put attention on actual lease because it's not represent market evidence of actual market lease.
So they're getting, what you're saying is they're getting $750 and $1176 gross, but if it was on the market, they'd get 15 net.
What my market evidence showed.
Okay, I have no other questions.
Ms. Nesbitt?
Did you inspect this property?
I didn't inspect it properly.
Do you know when it was inspected last?
I will check one second. I know that in 2016, this was a correction in our system about elevator, that it's not exist. Yes, it was in 2016.
Okay, thank you. I also have a question about your cap rate, specifically your page 5. I guess I'm looking at your income value summary. And your page 6, your other summary, the one we're not looking at.
On page 5, everything model generated. On page 6, it's my opinion of value of this property.
So why would you use 2 different cap rates?
Because it is location and type of building. I use 6.7.
Yeah.
It's inside our cap rate for suburban B.
Why did you choose 6.7 versus 5.7 that the model uses? Why was it increased, I guess, is my question. I guess ultimately I'm wondering, in your opinion.
Because on page 7,
Yeah?
our range 6.2 to 7.3, very well supported by Colliers, CBRE, Bushman Field. They have very similar range. So I did apply 6.7 to be fair for this property.
Does that suggest then that we believe a 6.7 cap rate is more appropriate?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Davidson?
I have no questions at this time, thank you.
So on page 5, your potential rent combined is $59,760. On page 6, your potential is 75,000?
75,000, yes.
75,000. So you think that the model is winding up very much low by comparison with what you found as comparable properties?
Yes. My market evidence, my comparable property showed $15. It's fair for this type of property, office building.
And the model came out at 5.7, but you're thinking 6.7.
And model have 59.76, but it's applied a lower cap rate.
Mhm.
So in both our estimation, we very close. I came across 1 million and close to 1 million in model estimation. So my estimation shows that what we assessed, it should be confirmed, it's right.
Okay, thank you very much.
It's fair for this
That's
property.
Okay, page 2 of my report, just shows a picture of the property. It faces onto Henderson. It's the northern part of Henderson. It's got good parking. It's a 2-story building. It was constructed in 1978, and as I mentioned earlier when I asked the assessor, there is no elevator in this property. Building was constructed in 78. Masonry construction consists of 5,742 gross square feet. The leasable area after deducting common areas is 2,500 square feet per floor. The second floor is accessible only by stairs. 18 parking stalls. I can ask the board to turn to page 7. I must apologize, I meant to bring all the street numbers that I have for these comparisons, and I didn't. But I can go through them. Okay, the city's using it $11.95 per square foot combined for the main and the second floor. The actual main floor lease is for $11.76 gross, signed in April of 16 by Snowman, Manitoba. Deducted $7.01 for expenses. Actual in 2017, the net rent is $4.75 per square foot based on 2,500 square feet. Now, we looked at some similar, well, we're trying to find ones that were older, OFS buildings. The first one's on Provencher, it's an older building in 1929. There's 4 on Border, those are 1313 Border. It's on the corner of Dublin and Border. It's a 2-story to 3-story office building on the front, and then a large strip of warehouse and offices along Border Street. The leasable areas I have range from 888 square feet to 5,877 square feet. The average is $10.58 and the median is $10.84. All the leases were signed in 2017. Market rent of $10.84 higher than actual is applied as market for the main floor. So I get a market rent per annum of $27,000 for the main floor. As for the second floor, there are 2 tenants. The owner occupies 1,500 square feet and Tech Beyond, who pays $6.60 gross for 1,000 square feet. This would net down to $1.19. Due to accessibility difficulty, no elevator access, a lower rent should be applied to the second floor, and that's based on the municipal board order. An elevator is necessary to make the second floor marketable as office space for most prospective employers. Top of page 8, the board made deductions in the second floor rent based on the estimated cost to install an elevator amortized over 20 years. A rent of $12 was applied to the main floor and $9 to the second. Based on the same logic, the rent of $9 will be applied to the subject second floor. As a note, the upper floor rents above are mostly with elevator access. So we come up with $9 for the school exempt portion. We're accepting the city's vacancy of 5.5. The non-recovers, we're still continuing to apply the 7%. For shortfall, we're using $7. Now for the capitalization rate, I'll go through this quickly. We did our own little studies and we found that in most cases the capitalization rates for office buildings were static between April of 16 and April of 18. At the top of page 11, you've got suburban office space here. Colliers they actually went up. In Q1 of 16, they were 6.5 they stayed the same to 7.25. In Q1 18 for CBRE, it was 7% to 7.5 and 7 to 7.5, so they stayed static. City applied cap rates for office downtown, Class A. The 016 cap rate was 6%, 18 to 6%. Downtown B was 6.75, and it's still 6.75. Downtown C in 16 was 7.5 to 8. The assessment department dropped that to 7.05. OD, it went from 8.25 in 16, 8.25 to 8.05 in 18, as of April 1, 18. And for office suburban, it stayed static according to their range. Page 12, we have some sales here that we did through our analysis. I guess the closest comparison would be 1046 St. Mary, that's the third one down. That's a January 11, 2018 sale, and we came up with a 6.95 capitalization rate for that one. The top of page 13 is the table with the cap rates that are being applied by Altus. And the top of page 14 is my end result, and I got the city applied a capitalization rate of 5.7. For the 2018 cycle, the city used a cap rate of 5.5%, and the board agreed with Altus and used a 7% cap rate in their order. Since our analysis shows no compression from April 1/16 to April 1/18, we will apply 7% cap rate in our evaluation. So the first, there's 3 lines at the end, the last column there, that's the second floor, using the rents there and a 7 cap. And then the main floor, we had come up with a total value of $595,000. So I requested the board reduce the 2020 assessment from $937 to $595, split out as $326 taxable and $269 school tax exempt. And I'm open for questions.
Please open page 7. Price potential market rent. You have not identified your comparables, have you?
No, I gave you what I knew I had. I can have, the ones on Border are 1313. The one on Wellington is 1780 Wellington. The Portage, I think they're 3011, but I don't wanna say for sure.
So I cannot verify your leases, can I?
No, you can't.
No questions.
Mrs. Nesbit?
No, I have no questions.
Davidson?
I have no questions either. Thank you.
And I have no questions. That brings us to, where's my sheet? 1110 Henderson.
File number 19-399693. Roll number 0400043300. Owner Appleton Holding Limited and LBL Holdings Limited. We are valuing the property as it stands on January 1st, 2020, based on economic condition of April 1st, 2018.
Do you mind if I just stop you for a second here? We seem to have a discrepancy, if I'm looking at this correctly, between who the owner is.
Oh, I put it as properties, but on page 2 it's
Oh,
actually.
page 2, okay,
Yeah,
yep.
sorry.
All right, no problem. Carry on.
This appeal is with respect to the amount of the assessed value only. Based on evidence contained in this report, it is assessor opinion that the market value of subject property is April 1st, 2018, $2,130,000, and that the 2020 assessed value of $1,284,000 should be confirmed. On page 2, we can see subject air photos. Oh, sorry, I skipped location. Sorry about it. The subject property is located northeast portion of the city of Winnipeg. Page 11, subject location map. It's located west from Henderson Highway. And on page 12, you can see photo of subject property. The subject site has rectangular shape of 10,200 square feet. The improvements is a 3-floor building constructed in 1971. On page 2, I did copy some property leases. They started between 2005 and 2015, around from $8.75 to $14. On my page 1, on my next page, I have same 9 rent comparables in this area. On bottom of my table, rent, I have a photo of my comparables. Red dot is our subject property. We did assess this subject property by 1110 Henderson on April 1st, 2018 at $10.71. We did apply 9.7 thousand square feet. Please open page 4. I did apply, it's my estimation of subject property specific for site, $15, because my Mean of my comparables $15.52, and my median $16.50. So $15 is fair for this type of properties. My potential rent came across 145,500. We did apply a 5.5% vacancy standard for this type of buildings. We allowed for general 2% expense allowance that include advertising, promotion, professional fees, structural repairs, and also shortfall allowance per square foot to account for not recoverable expenses during time of vacancy. We apply $7. Capitalization rate 6.2% for these properties. It range between our suburban B between 6.2 and 7.3%. My opinion is that this property valued just over $2 million. We did assess at $1,284,000. It's should be confirmed. Thank you.
Question?
Yes, on page 1 of your report, you showed that it was actually built in 1971, and it has an effective age built of 72,
Yes,
and that it's 3 levels.
it's 3 levels.
You aware that this one doesn't have an elevator either?
I don't have elevator.
No. Last time I was there, it still had wood paneling on the walls on the 3rd floor.
My chiropractor worked there.
Did he have an elevator?
No.
No. Okay, so if I look at your comparisons on page, I guess it's page 3.
Yeah, page 3, sorry.
Okay, your oldest comparison is 1979.
Correct?
Okay, the bottom 2 are at $12.1336, and the top 2 is in that strip mall, and they're at $17.07 and $18.16. Correct? Did, like, you used $15 in your second valuation. So the ones at 1980 at 1215 Henderson, that was built in 1980. That's a newer building considerably than the subject. It's on the bottom of page 20. It's a nicer looking building than the subject. It's only 2 stories. Correct? And then the next one with a high rent is in Riverbend at 2536 Main Street, and that was built in 2010. And that one definitely has an elevator, it's got a chiropractor office, etc. in there, correct? So where does 15 come from on a 1971 building?
From my comparables.
Your model is driven by everybody sending in their income expense mailers, correct? Then you group them in areas and by age and by class of building, correct?
Correct.
Could your model be that far off?
Our model give $10.71. That's why I say we have to confirm our assessed value $1,284,000. It shows that our model showed its fair assessment.
Okay, so we shouldn't even look at the one where you put $15 on it and a lower cap?
No, it's my specific, because I don't ask this number, I don't ask for increase.
Okay, I have no other questions.
Ms. Nesbitt?
I do have a question. You're assessing 9,700 square feet.
Correct.
I'm looking at your subject property leases. They add up to 8,403 square feet. So am I missing something? Is there
Because it's vacant space there.
vacant space?
Yeah, I just reposted. So let's see. On page 18,
18, yeah. I see.
we see vacant space.
But that's 725, right? So I'm still missing that 725 square feet, right? If I'm adding them, right?
Sometimes our leasable area not 100% similar to reported area.
Okay, because I'm still missing about 500 more square feet, so I'm just wondering how to
Because we
reconcile.
can see the gross floor area on page 1.
Mhm.
Gross floor area for this building, 12,315 square feet. We assess only 9.7 thousand square feet leasable area. So, because it's stairwell, empty space.
Yeah, and that's fine,
storage,
and I'm
yeah.
looking at the leases, and it adds up to
Yeah, I
8,403.
just
So in
each
your
of these
potential
is-
rent premise IDs, are any of those vacant spaces?
Yes,
Which ones?
it's all premises for this building. Sometimes we inactivate one of premise because tenants occupied close office or close space. Sometimes they remove wall, so that's why our square footage fluctuate when it's happened. In my case, I cannot identify. I know that overall rate by model $10.71.
Yes, I see that, I see the good one. And you used a capitalization rate of 7.2, does that reflect, that really a result of the age of the building?
Yes.
It being in 1972?
Yes, it's correct.
Doesn't look like there's, no, 1972 is your effective year built, so what would have been done to give it a 1-year difference from actual age to effective year age?
Because I get, I'm not sure, I know that. Sometimes building in 2 days, 2 years. I don't know this.
That's fine,
Just
thank
in
you.
our record, something.
Thank you.
Ms. Davidson?
I have no questions, thank you.
No, I have no questions.
Okay, I'll keep this pretty brief. If you turn to page 6 of my presentation, the city's overall rent that they've applied is under potential rent, is $103,880 or $10.71 based on 9,700 square feet. Now I've taken the rent roll and I've applied $8 to the vacant space, and I come up with a 9,654 square feet at 1083 for 104,517. So my rent is slightly higher than that of the assessor. On page 7, under vacancy allowance, the city has applied an April 18 vacancy allowance of 5.5%. Last cycle, the assessor used a 7.0% vacancy allowance, and the board agreed to a 20% vacancy allowance due to the higher than normal vacancy experience. Vacancy for 16 and 17 was 7.51, and I'm suggesting that we should be using a 7.5% vacancy rate for the current assessment. Shortfall, 7%, non-recoverables, we use at 7%. The assessor's using a cap rate of 7.2. For the last cycle, the board agreed with us on a 7.5% cap rate. The compression of 0.3% I don't think is unreasonable, and therefore I'm using the 7.2% in my presentation as well. So on page 8, based on our rent of $10.83 a square foot on 9,654 square feet, with a 7.5% vacancy, 7% non-recoverable, $7 shortfall, and a 7.2% capitalization rate, I come up to a value of $1,178,000 round. Current assessment is $1,284,000. I'm asking for a slight reduction to $1,178,000. And I'm open to questions.
Questions? You have provided no evidence for the market lease, have you?
Just the rent roll.
You would agree that actual rent are not always its market rent?
Yeah, this building, I would assume their market.
No question. Thank you.
Ms. Nesbitt?
No questions?
Ms. Davidson?
No questions.
This is 3 stories with no elevator.
No elevator.
Any way of judging what impact that has on value?
Well, the rent roll is showing that the rents are around the $10 range, as opposed to the buildings that, I haven't got any comparables with the elevators, but if you look at some of the assessors comparables that are newer with elevators, are getting closer to the $15 to $17 range.
As a combined, all
No,
floors?
on per
or-
unit, on a unit.
Yeah, but how's that vary between, say, a 3rd floor unit and a main floor unit?
Okay, I guess I'll see if I can identify that. I can't in the subjects because they're kind of all over the place. So no,
Is it an inhibiting factor in this case?
This one I think it is.
Yeah.
They're narrow stairways. If you have somebody that has a disability, you can never rent it to a government agency. Because you have to have handicap access. So I think it must be under an old grandfather clause or whatever.
Okay, thank you very much. We are moving on to 230, Anderson.
File number 19-2741, roll number 140-81-89900. It's located 230 Henderson Highway, owner 72258-386, Manitoba Limited. This, we are valuing the property as stand of January 1st, 2020, based on economic condition April 1st, 2019. This appeal is with respect to the amount as assessed value only. Based on evidence in this report, it is assessor opinion that the market value of subject property as April 1st, 2019, $1,122,000, and that the 2020 assessed value of $944,000 should be confirmed. The subject property is located on northeast portion of the city of Winnipeg. On page 13, subject location map with photo 14 and 15. The subject size has this rectangle shape of 4,017 square feet. The improvements, Amazon improvements, 2-floor building was built in 1979 with gross floor area 6,400 and EBITDA assessed with leasable area 5,973 square feet. I have presented on my page 3, same comparables with media of $15.52, mean and media of $60.50. We assess at $11.85. My estimation on page 6. I did estimation in $14 per square foot. We allow for 5.5% vacancy, expenses 2%, shortfall 7%, capitalization rate 6.7. My estimation just around $1 million. Our assessment, 2020 assessment, 944,000. 100,000 should be confirmed. Thank you.
Question?
No, I have no questions.
Ms. Nesbitt?
I have no questions.
Ms. Davidson?
I have no questions.
Oh, somebody's got to have a question.
Pressure's on you.
Oh, gee, whiz. Well, I'm not any smarter than the rest of you, so I have no questions.
Okay, Okay, on page 2 is a picture of the property. As you can see, there's ground floor lease that's for rent. RCS Insurance is actually the owner who bought the building in 2016, where he paid, I think it was $750,000 in 2016, and then he occupied the top floor. Again, this is another one without an elevator, but I'm not gonna harp on that. And if I could actually turn to page 6. Under the potential market rent, the total potential market rent applied by the city is $70,796,000 or $11.85 per square foot over a leasable area of 5,973. The actual rents in place as of the reference date are, okay, I should explain this. The rent for H&R Block actually decreased from $13.30 to $12 per square foot effective June 1 of 17. The vacant space on the main floor was originally listed for $12 in 2017 with no luck. The third floor is occupied by the owner and we're using a net rent of $12. Based on the actual rents in place of $11 for the vacant space, we are using an overall net rent of $11.68. So it's not that far off. The city's at $70,796 and we're at $69,763. The city has applied a April 18 vacancy allowance of 5.5%. Last cycle, the assessor used a 7% vacancy allowance. The vacancy for 2017 was 32%. Since vacancy is not yet considered chronic, a 10% vacancy allowance is suggested for the current assessment, $7 for shortfall, 7% for non-recoveries. And then we come to the capitalization rate. I made an error there. I'd like to ask the board to correct it. The April 18 cap rate applied by the city is 6.7%. Last cycle, the city used a 6.5% cap rate. We will accept the city's rate is 6.7. It shouldn't say 7.
Nice try.
Nice try, yeah. But in the workup, you can see below. So basically, our rents are very similar, but I'm allowing for a 10% vacancy. The subject value for the assessment purpose is $809,000 rounded. I guess if I could get the board to turn to page 14. This is the December 31st, 17 rent roll. You can see there on the middle on the right-hand side, their average percent of vacancy was 32%. And then if we go to page 16, it's got the rent roll here. So H&R Block is actually a gross rent. And so I don't feel that the rent we're using is unreasonable. And then on page 19 is a copy of an older listing. And you can see this is before the owner actually moved in, because their signage isn't on the top yet. But this is where it says $12 per square foot per annum net, or $19.13 per month. And then this goes through here. And then on pages 21 and 22, there's photos of the space that's for rent, and they're asking $12. And on page 23, there's the floor plan of the area that's for rent, and the location. So based on our market rent and a 10% vacancy, we asked the board to reduce the value from $944,000 to $809,000. That's my presentation.
Questions?
You have provided no market evidence for the lease, have you?
No, but I guess the person that's leasing at Roswell Realty, they've been trying to get $12 for the main floor and they haven't had any luck, so I don't think the actual $12 that's in there for an HR block, which is a step down, is unreasonable, and then using 12 on the second floor for the owner's space, I thought was fair.
You would agree that actual rent not always at market level?
Not always, sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower.
No questions. Other questions?
Ms. Nesbitt?
I do have a question just about the vacancy.
Yeah.
So sorry, I was trying to follow along. And you said it's not chronic. What was the vacancy in 2018? As at the reference date?
Vacant.
100%
It's
vacant?
still, with that space, that
Yeah.
one unit is still vacant.
Is still vacant.
I
So
have a
is-
new listing for it, but I can't show it because it's
No, that's okay. So how many square feet would that be?
1913.
1913, still vacant, was vacant in 2017.
Yes.
Still vacant in 2018.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Davidson?
I have no questions.
Okay, we'll take a short break. We will resume with 705 Regent Avenue West.
File number 19-3489, roll number 0900545400, 705 Regent Avenue West. Owner is Curtis Rosia. We are valuing the property as it stands on January 1st, 2020, based on the economic condition April 1st, 2019. This appeal is with respect to the amount of assessed value only. Based on evidence in this report, it is assessor opinion that the market value of the subject property as April 1st, 2018, 420,000, and that the 2020 assessed value should be confirmed. The subject property is located at northeast corner of the city of Winnipeg. On page 12, 13, and 14 on my report, subject location map, subject site, and photos on page 14. For the subject size has rectangle shape of 6,599 square feet. One floor building was built, improvements was built in 1962. This basement area of 1,845 square feet and visible area of 2,827 square feet. On page 2, there are photo of subject properties. I had presented on page 3 same 9 comparables on Regent, Henderson, Main Street, and Jefferson. Our subject property assessed at April 1st, 2018 at $10.35. My comparable showed a median of $16.50, or my comparables photos, bottom of the table. Red dot is our subject property. On page 4, our income estimation. Subject property has total area of 2,827 square feet. We did apply $10.35 with potential rent around 29,000. 5.5% vacancy is standard for this type of properties. We allowed for 2% of non-recoverable expenses that include advertising, promotion, professional fees, structural repairs, etc. And also shortfall allowance per square foot to account for not recoverable expenses during time of vacancy, $7 per square foot. Capitalization rate for this property is 6.2%. It's in line with our range on page 6, between 6.2 to 7.3. Our estimation of 420,000 is fair and should be confirmed.
Questions?
No questions.
Ms. Nesbitt?
I have no questions.
Ms. Davidson?
I have no questions either.
You've used the same comparables as we've got used to seeing here. This property appears to be a converted house.
Yes, correct.
Is it similar to the other properties?
It's a one-floor building. It's very small compared to another property, but it's what I have comparables. because it's for our office space comparables for this type of building. It's what I have. We have list current leases.
There's no comparables of
No, I
similar houses that have been converted to office type use.
Yeah, I can,
Okay.
but it's still a space, occupation space.
All right.
What usually rent, if this person decide to move somewhere else, what he will pay for this space.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, if I could ask the board to turn to page 4, under property description. The subject is, property is best described as a single-family residential home converted to a medical office. Building was constructed in 1962 as a duplex of wood frame construction and consists of 1,845 square feet on the main, plus 1,845 square feet on the basement. I kind of got this turned around, but the property was purchased in 1994. It was converted in 1987 to partial office use, and in 2010 to 100% office use. One half of the basement is unfinished and used for storage. The other half is an unused recreation room with a shower room and remains unused since the main floor conversion in 2010. Basement is not considered rentable due to narrow stairs and a low ceiling height of between 6 and 7 feet. Property is located on the north side of Regent Avenue between Plessis to the west and Brewster Street to the east. The immediate surrounding properties are single-family residential with the retail strip property located immediately to the east. The site is 6,600 square feet, zone C2. Property has a 2-car garage and room for 4 parking stalls. Under market income, I've used the same comparables. I couldn't find any rents either for converted houses, but based on this, I've used our average rent of I've used $10.50 for the main floor, and since the basement is not usable as office space due to the stairway and the ceiling height, I've used half of the main floor rent. So if you turn to page 7, my overall rent is $859 or $24,283 as opposed to the assessor's $29,270. There's a roughly $5,000 difference in potential rent. We're applying the assessor's vacancy rate of 5.5, but for non-recoverables, we're using 7 as opposed to 2. $7 for shortfall, and we're accepting the cap rate of 6.2 for the subject. So on page 8, I have a summary of the valuation. 2,827 square feet leasable area, potential income 24,283, cap vacancy of 5.5, non-recoverables is 7, 6.2 cap rate. We come to 327,000 rounded, and I'm open for questions.
On page 6, agent briefs, you haven't identified the comparables, have you?
Yep.
So I cannot verify them, can I?
Correct.
No questions.
Ms. Nesbitt?
I have no questions.
Ms. Davidson?
I have no questions.
This is getting very similar. I have no questions. Nairn Avenue.
File number 19-3474, roll number 140-930-5300, Nairn Avenue, owner Courier Enterprise Limited. Where as valuing the property as a stand of January 1st, 2020, based on the economic condition April 1st, 2018. This appeal is with respect to the amount of the assessed value only, based on evidence contained in this report. In this assessor opinion, that the market value of subject property April 1st, 2018, $696,000, and that the 2020 assessed value of $684,000 should be confirmed. The subject property located northeast corner of the city of Winnipeg on page 13, subject location map in air photo. It's located on north side of Louis Bridge. and south side of Nairn Avenue. A rectangle shape of size has 6,220 square feet. The two-story improvements was constructed in 1910. Visible area for just close to 5,000 square feet. On page 2, property occupied by Auto Approved Inc. A lease was signed in 2017 for $14.98. Sale history, sale in 2014, it was multi-place sale involving 310 Nairn Avenue, 312 Nairn Avenue, and also adjusted piece of land. My comparables, same 9 comparables on Ridge, Henderson, Main Street, Jefferson, with media of $16.50. We did mass appraising, apply $11.83, it's fair. It's but when we look size specific, my estimation on page number 6, I did apply $13.70 per square foot. It's lower than existing lease in 2017. But, vacancy allowance for this type of property is 6%. We allowed for 2% not recoverable expenses that include advertising, promotion, professional fee structure repairs, as well as shortfall allowance per square foot to account for not recoverable expenses during time of vacancy of $6.50. Our rent 7.65%. It's much higher as it's our range on page 7 because this building very old. So my rounded estimation 796,000. We did ask for 684,000 should be confirmed.
Questions?
Thank you. Any questions?
Location of all your comparables are, would you say they're superior to where the subject is?
Correct.
Okay, and they're a lot newer?
Correct.
That's all the questions I have.
Ms. Nesbitt?
I have no questions.
Ms. Davidson?
Just on the comparables, were you able to find any that were of this age, 1931, and
No.
condition?
My comparables, what we see, 1988 and I want to mention that property was renovated in 2013. So I need to look into and see about effective years built. It should be Queen Cup.
Was it built as a, what was it originally built as? It was, when you look at the picture, it's not sure what it is.
On my permits. It was, I have permits 1999.
Okay.
It was occupied, it was commercial building occupied by a gift shop.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have no questions. Mr. Butler?
Okay, just kind of to follow up on what it was, actually, this is where the River Rouge used to dock.
Oh.
Yeah, so if you look at, if you look at page 3 of my brief, and actually, Savannah has, I think, a better, it's where the,
Yes.
so I think that was the gift shop, and I think there might have been residents up top.
Okay.
But the original age is, as mentioned, was
1910.
1910.
Yeah.
And it currently has a 1931 variant. If I could ask the board just to go to page 6, and I actually put addresses in on this one. I looked for old comparisons of just smaller properties. And I got ages ranging from 1949 to 1992. The rents ranged anywhere from $8.37 to a high of $12.82. Again, the location of all the comparables on Osborne, even though Narren is a major thoroughfare, not where the subject is, that's coming just off the bridge. There are some issues there. So based on the comparables that I have, I've used $11 on the main, $8 to the upper, and $4.50 to the basement space. So on page 7,
Sorry, could you just repeat that, 11 main?
11 on the main, 8 on the second, and $4.50 on the basement. So on page 7, my total overall rent is $8.60 a square foot as opposed to the assessed rate of $11.83. We've used the assessor's vacancy allowance to 6, we've used 7% for non-recovers, $6.50 for shortfall, and we've used the assessor's cap rate of 7.65 short, sorry. So on page 8, there's a summary of our valuation, and it comes up to $464,117, or $464,000 rounded. As mentioned earlier, this property was part of the sale with the 2 other properties, the one on the east and the one on the west. It's all owned by Carrera Enterprises, which is B-Clean. They own a lot of the properties on the other side of the street as well. So based on the age, location, etc., I'm suggesting a value of $464,000. Open to questions.
Ms. Nesbitt?
No, I have no questions.
Ms. Davidson?
No, I have no questions.
I got a question. Is the riverbank eroding there?
Yeah, but if you look at the, I don't think the assessor includes it all. If you look on page 3 of my brief, I think they're only using up to the paved area there. I don't know for sure.
Everything area, because it's along the river.
Yeah. So it's just where the paved area is? Yeah. So they do make an allowance, they don't add for that last. But they do have problems around there, like even the LaSalle Hotel, which is just down the street. They have some problems sometimes with flooding.
What does a prospective buyer think of that? I mean, a lessee, potentially not there for a very long time. What does the lessee care? But the
Right.
buyer of the property?
I'm not sure, it's like he wants to own that part of the city, and he does have, like if you'll see, he sometimes, the people that he's leasing these to, like auto dealers, like used cars, so he does use the lot to the west sometimes for storing cars, and then on the right, he uses that more as his retail area for the cars.
Okay. All my questions? Lastly, 312 Narren, probably close by.
Similar. 19-3475, roll number 140930540, address 312 Narren Avenue, Belon Carniera Enterprise Limited. We are valuing the property as it stands of January 1st, 2020, based on economic condition April 1st, 2018. This appeal is with respect to the amount of the assessed value only. Based on evidence in this report, it is assessor opinion that the market value of subject property as of April 1st, 2018, $372,000, and that the 2020 assessed value should be confirmed. This subject property is located in the northeast portion of city of Winnipeg, page 1213. Subject location map in my report and a photo. Rectangle shape of land is 14,426 square feet. Two-story improvements were constructed in 1959. Interior ventilation was done in 1999. It was I did present it same same 9 comparables with media of $16.50. We did apply for this property $13.68 for around 2,000 square feet, 1,880 square feet. On page 2, it's existing lease on this property, size 2016. For $19.50, we still assessing $13.68. It's fair. Map of my comparables below on bottom of my page 3. So by using $13.68, potential rent just at around $26,000. We apply 5.5% vacancy rate, and also allowed for 2% not recoverable expenses that include advertising, promotion, professional fees, structural details, etc. And also we allow shortfall allowance per square foot to account for not recoverable expenses during time of vacancy of $7. Capitalization rate of 6.2% was applied for this property, so our estimate value of subject property $3,072 should be confirmed. Questions?
Mr. Becker, question?
No, I have questions, thank you.
Ms. Nesbitt?
No questions.
Ms. Davidson?
Just a clarification, is this a tenant or is it owner occupied?
It's tenant,
Just the one?
yes.
Okay.
And that tenant is actually renting at $19.15?
Yes,
Why so high?
because you can see my comparables on region, $18.60, it's still in this range. It's also very good parking space, because it's auto solution, it's need parking. So, but we don't count for parking. No count for it.
And
It's
you're-
inside our rent.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
account
but
for
you're
it.
only using $13.68,
Yeah, that's why it's fair and should be confirmed.
model generated.
Mhm.
Okay. Mr. Becker?
I'm gonna answer that question.
You might.
Yeah, on page 18, here's the mailer. Now, I'm not exactly sure who fills this out, but if you look at the top left-hand corner, it says fully owner occupied.
Sorry, page 18.
18
Of your-
of my brief, yes.
Sorry.
So it shows fully owner occupied, it shows the rent as net, and it shows the rent as residential. But so they filled it out kind of wrong, and then if you look on the right-hand side, it shows all the expenses, and the net operating income's actually only $8,600. So, and then it's 90% vacant and has 26 stalls. On page 20, it shows the auto dealership from 16, and it shows monthly rent $2,800, and that they have to pay the property taxes. So I'm not exactly sure what they're using, so I did go to the market as well on that one. So if I could ask the board to turn to page 6. Under potential market income, I got the actual leases for 1915 gross signed in July 16 until August 2020 by CCA Auto Solutions. They quote the leasable area as 1,755 square feet, main and upper, but enjoy the use of the basement if they require. The lease also allows for 25 to 30 parking stalls. The owner also allows the tenant to use an additional 12 to 15 stalls at the neighboring site at 302 Nair. Deducting $10 for expenses, actual expenses in 17 were $24,926 or $14.04 square foot. The net rent is actually $9.15 a square foot based on 1,755 square feet of leasable area. Now I looked at some comparisons. They're all built in the 70s except for number 5. Here's a converted house that I said I couldn't find any converted houses. Number 5 is actually on Provencher Boulevard, very close to Archibald. It would be on the north side of Archibald if you were coming down, no, north side of Provencher, just as you turn off of Archibald. That's an old house, smaller at 888 square feet. That was built in 1929, converted to it's a massage therapist. That one's for $10.14. Now the other ones here are all, like, indexes 1 to 4 and 5 are all 1 to 2-story office buildings built between 1975 and 1979. Index number 5 is a converted house built in 1928 and is occupied by a massage therapist. The subject property was originally built in 1959 and the assessor is using the variant age in 1970. Based on the above comparisons in location and the site disadvantages, we will use a net rent of $11 per square foot applied to the assessor's leasable area of 1880. Vacancy, we're using 5.5, 7 for non-recoverable, 7 for shortfall. Then if we get to cap rate, if I could ask the board to turn all the way to the bottom of page 12. The city has applied a capitalization rate of 6.2%. For the 2018 cycle, the city used the cap rate as 5.5, and Altus was asking for 7%. The Board of Revision ended up using a cap rate of 6.75. Since our analysis shows no compression from 16 to 18, and our range for OFSs is between 6.25 and 7.5, we will use a 6.75 cap. Based on our income and a 6.75 cap, we have a value of $258,531 or $259,000 rounded. And that's my presentation.
Question?
You haven't provided any cap rate comparables, have you?
Just the one that you
yes.
see on page
11.
11, yeah.
Thank you, no questions.
Ms. Nesbitt?
No questions.
Ms. Davidson?
This is just for my own information, so when you come up with an $11 in square foot, parking is, it includes the 26 parking or
Yes.
availability of the 26.
Yeah.
So that's calculated in, because obviously that's probably important to the dealership versus that
Yeah, I
old
think,
building.
yeah, none of these have the parking that this one has, like the
Right.
1 to 2-story office buildings with
Right.
whatever parking
Wouldn't
stalls.
have that amount.
Right.
So this is almost fits this particular unique, not unique business, but you have to have a lot of parking.
You have to have a lot, and like when the River Rouge was there, it was perfect,
Yeah,
because it had all the
people,
parking.
yeah.
And they
thank
would
you.
actually use the other lot too, closer to the Louise Bridge.
Right,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
I have no questions.
All right, we did it.
Did
Like
it.
that. Hopefully everybody's car is there. Did you get yours renewed?
I renewed it. Whether or not they'll, well, they took my money, so they can't give me a ticket. Yeah, I wouldn't do it.
What's that?
You took my money.
That concludes the hearing. That does conclude the hearing.